again by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Lilia able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal.
Bring in the fans, 1-1. Score! Off the floor! On the board! Paul Kariya!
I was honestly just waiting to see if you would lead it in or if you were stuck in a play. Playing
No, I'm fucking annoyed. I'm just so annoyed right now. I don't know what we're going to talk about tonight. Nothing's happened.
Yeah. It's like all the things we hoped and expected would happen. This is as far down the list of what we kind of thought would happen, and it's probably the worst case scenario of what could happen.
Does this compromise the $1,000 parlay?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no. Okay. Yes and no. All of those things could still happen. So it's not.
Yeah, technically everything is still in play.
Honestly, it puts it maybe in a better situation because now they have more cap space to play with. Even though it's not like they needed it, but
we'll get into that later. That's my least favorite argument about this entire trade with people being like, "Oh, but think of the cap space. It $3 million.
We were desperately needed."
I saw it on Facebook. I think I sent it to Steven. It was like, "Oh well, the Ducks saved $3.8 million in cap space. Now they can go and sign Marner and somebody. Like they couldn't do that already." And then they were comparing Paling and Zegras' stats from last season. They're like, "Yeah, their stats are pretty similar." It's like, oh my god. Okay.
The degree, like, I was thinking about it, and I don't think, like, imagine being Ryan Paling right now. And you're like, oh, I just got traded for the dude that everybody loved, except for apparently the organization. And, like, if you're his agent, you're in a great fucking mood because you're like, oh, once it hits January 1, I'm asking for an extension immediately. They're clearly going to give it to me because they just traded the face of the franchise for me. And if you're him, you're just like, God, I better score like 10 short-handed goals or they're going to kill me with fucking torches. Like, I do actually feel bad for Ryan Paling because truthfully, none of this is his fucking fault.
There's absolutely nothing he can do next season where he's not going to get hate. And it's not his fault by any means, but there's absolutely nothing he can do next season where he's just going to get hated on relentlessly no matter what.
Like, if we had traded a second round pick for him, I would be like, oh, that's a severe overpay. But you know what? That's the guy. That's the price. Fuck it. Picks are, you know what I mean? Like, I could very easily, like, you guys have heard me. I can talk myself into fucking anything. I absolutely could have talked myself into overpaying for Ryan Paling and being like, look, at the end of the day, what matters most is we got the guy we wanted, and the asset management part of it isn't great. The cost analysis part of it isn't great. But if this is a guy that, like, Quenneville and the new coaching staff are going to feel comfortable trusting, then that matters. He's got more size. Like, I was looking at his RAPM chart. He's really not any different than Isaac Lundestrom, except he played in a better system last year, so some of his shots for metrics are a little higher. But, like, beyond that, I just, like, you know, I don't – he didn't do anything wrong, and he's absolutely hosed because the people in charge of the organization –
It's one of the most undesirable spots he could possibly be in terms of, like, the situation, how the team is going to be coached. He'll be fine. His like size and speed is what Quenneville's been trying to preach, but the second he has like a turnover in the offensive zone, people are gonna be like, "Oh, the guy we traded for Trevor Zegras, of course, just loses the puck in his own end." Every minute detail that he does is going to be scrutinized. fairly or unfairly so. I mean, it's like, to draw a comparison from another sport, it's like when Mookie Betts got traded, everybody in Boston immediately hated Alex Verdugo, and they were right.
Yeah,
It's
right.
just whenever either face of the franchise or fan favorite gets traded, whatever the return is, it will not be enough unless it's a specific like Cutter Gauthier and Jamie Drysdale trade.
Bro, it's so funny you say that. So, okay, you literally said two things that I had already been thinking. Like, dude, I really did plan to just shut up the whole time. When we get to the draft, I'm not going to talk because I don't fucking care. I'm so mad. But you said two things that I genuinely hit on things I'd been thinking, which is one, boy, how fucking happy is FSG right now that the Rafael Devers trade is not the dumbest trade in the world anymore. Like, it's still a really bad trade, but like they don't look quite as stupid as we do. And then the other thing is they could fucking draft Victor Hedman or Drew Doughty or Ray fucking Bork with that 45 pick, and I still don't care. It's still incredibly bad process. It's bad process. Eddy said it perfectly, and then we should let Eddy talk because me and you have been doing this because that's who we are. We're yappers. They had 3 first-round fucking picks, and we didn't get a single one of them. A single one.
And to that, they had 4 second-round picks. We got their third one.
Mm-hmm. We didn't even get our own pick back.
We didn't get our own pick back.
Yeah. He just did this shit with New York, where he was like, let me go get my own pick back. He didn't even fucking do that.
I was so shocked when I went to their page to see, just to kind of get a look at what they had. I think this was before it came out what we were getting in return, just to kind of get a glimpse of the rest of the roster, like, kind of the main guys, but just to see what else could be coming back. And then to see they have 3 first-round picks and 4 seconds. And I think I meant to send this to you, Steven. I sent it to a buddy of mine. I was like, well, they have 3 firsts. Like, we're definitely getting draft picks back, assuming it was going to be a first-round pick that was coming back, and probably not theirs, but one of the other. They had Winnipeg's and somebody else's, so probably one of the later ones. And at least we'll get another first-round pick, and it is what it is. And I would have been happy with that regardless, but it's a first-round pick, whatever. And then to see it come in, and yeah, it's a second-round pick, and it's not even ours or theirs. It's the third worst second-round pick that they have.
Columbus.
Yeah, and then like, okay, you see that if you just saw the draft picks, okay, like what's the other big piece here? Like, it's got to be one of their top prospects or Tyson Forster or something, right? Like, it's got to be somebody else coming back.
You didn't even get fucking Cam York,
right?
Who they're trying to run out of town.
Yeah. There's so many other possibilities where, like, we could have been sitting here right now and just kind of talking ourselves into it. Like,
what's it? Don't they have Oliver Bonk? We couldn't even fucking go get Oliver Bonk.
Yeah, I think we've talked about him before too.
Right shot defenseman. Like,
yeah, there's a million other possibilities.
This is such bad process. This is such bad process. And I literally sat here like 5 fucking days ago and was like, I hate the over-analysis of the process, because at the end of the day, it's about the end result. This is fatal process. This is like clinically awful process. This is the kind of shit that they teach in an MBA class of like, don't run your company this way. You look like a moron. They didn't get a failed prospect out of it. They got a 26-year-old fucking center. Like, again, I was thinking about it. At least Bob Murray would have gone out and got somebody else who had high pedigree. You know what? Bob Murray would have at least gone and fucking got Alex Turcotte. Been like, you know what? We're going to move on. They're going to move on. We're going to get a different player. Change. We saw Bob Murray make change of scenery trades all the fucking time. We didn't even do that. We said, what we need is a 4th-line center who is just a little bit taller than our current 4th-line center, who is fine, by the way. Fine. He is perfectly fine. And 2 picks, like, I think
the 4th-round pick is now basically taking care of the pick that we sent off with Cam Fowler.
Yep.
And so Verbeek has this, I don't like this from him, but he has this weird fascination with, he always wants at least 1 pick per round. And on a surface level, I guess that's fine. But if we are truly pushing for the playoffs, who the hell cares about a 4th-round pick at this point? Get something else. This return is by far one of the worst parts of the trade.
What amazes me,
multitudes of the worst part about the trade.
Yeah, what amazes me too is like an hour before this, we get the Elliot Friedman article that comes out saying they're having significant discussions with multiple teams for Trevor Zegras. So if you didn't see that and you look at this trade, be like, okay, they were shoehorned into. Everybody knew they had to move him, whether he said he wouldn't want to re-sign or he asked for a trade or whatever. Like the return feels like that. Like you got to get this guy out of here. But when we have a report like an hour before the trade that multiple teams are discussing the trade, like how is this the best offer you got? And then you were looking at all these offers and you land on this one somehow being the best one, and you still pulled the trigger and said, yeah, this is what we're going to take for this guy. Like you're in no need to have to move this guy out. He's a pending RFA at the end of next season, so you have all the rights in your favor to keep him and see how he does this season, and hopefully he increases his trade value if that's all you're going to get. It makes no sense, and then he comes out and none of the explanations he gives explain why they had to make this trade now, other than he just wants to continue retooling the roster in the way that he wants it to be, which, like, I understand that's a fair response for any trade is like, oh, this guy just doesn't fit. But how much does he preach for guys like John Gibson that they're not going to move him unless they get what they want? And then this is what you get for Trevor Zegras. Like, you can't tell me that you walked away happy with this return. And this is by far the lowest value you could have got for Trevor Zegras. He could have played 30 games and put up 15 points, and you probably still could have got more from him in the regular season than you did right now.
I mean, Friedman was talking about it on Sportsnet. He said that there were like 3 to 4 teams that over the weekend, Pat Verbeek kind of like ramped up discussions with them. So this, on the surface, this looks like a deal where like Pat called Denny Briere and was just like, hey, I want to get rid of this guy. Send me your first offer. I'll say yes to whatever. But the fact that there's apparently 3 to 4 other teams that were vying for this, and this is still what you walk away with, is absolutely horrible. And then the difference between how do you see John Gibson as a 1st-round plus in terms of return, and you're holding strong on that through the trade deadline when apparently Edmonton was maybe or maybe not knocking on the door, and now it's again, is Edmonton going to upgrade their goaltending? And you're still holding firm on a 1st-round plus. And then for Trevor Zegras, quite literally, does anybody have an extra bag of pucks? And to cap onto that, this entire roster management, they've been preaching about how they want to have like a right shot center. Ryan Poehling is a left shot center. You didn't even fix that.
Do you know how fucking embarrassing it is that today I straight up thought out loud, fuck, it would have been real nice to get Logan Mailloux and a 1st-round pick last year instead of this shit.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is really the last thing I want to say about this, because I think, to me, this really sums up where I'm at. So 2-ish years ago, 3 years ago, somewhere in there, Trevor Zegras does an interview. Either with it wasn't anything like overly formal. I think it was just someone talking to him about like his game and that kind of stuff. And he was like, Patrick Kane's my favorite player in the world. That's the player I wanted to be growing up. Like, he just, the way he sees the ice, the way he manipulates time and space, and the way he's just constantly making shit out of nothing. That's the dude I wanted to be. Good, bad, indifferent. You watch Trevor Zegras play, and you go, that's a kid who really, really wanted to be Patrick Kane when he got older. And you can see it. You can see it in the way that he plays. You can see it in the way that he passes and the way that he shoots. You can see it in the way that he behaves and acts on the ice and how demonstrative he is. And the entire time I'm like, oh God, we're going to sign Patrick Kane. Oh, this is going to suck. We're going to fucking add Patrick Kane. And it didn't happen. Then we hired Joe Quenneville. And I don't know how you guys felt about that. I think you guys were fairly coy about your opinions on that. I wasn't really a fan. But one of the things that I told myself is, look, this is the guy who helped create Patrick Kane who helped turn Patrick Kane into a superstar in this league. Joe Quenneville does his introductory press conference. It's fucking crazy how the last year and a half, everybody's been calling me like, do you see that fucking roster? That roster's a lot like that Chicago roster you got. How crazy is that? That's fucking crazy. And everybody in their head is like, yeah, there's your dynamic playmaker. Maybe he's a wing, maybe he's a center, but that's your dynamic offensive superstar playmaker right there. That's the guy who can break a game wide open for you in about 15 seconds. Then, a couple weeks later, maybe a month and a half, I guess. I don't quite know how long it's been. We trade for Chris Kreider. And everybody's like, thank fucking God, bro. We brought in his big homie. This is going to be great. That's his boy. The Ducks media. Your BFF Trevor is here. Your annoying little brother is here. How cool is that? And he's like, yeah, it's kind of cool. He's an insane person. I really love spending time with him. I see him every summer. Yeah, I've been working with him since he was a little kid. Trevor goes on fucking Instagram. And again, I know that sounds stupid, but these are 22-year-old professional athletes. Instagram is a real big deal. And he's just a big heart with Chris Kreider. He's coming to the Ducks. Everyone's like, oh, this is perfect. They brought his homie in. They brought in a coach who should be able to help get the most out of him. This is the year he puts it all together, and it's going to be really funny because it's the last year in his bridge deal, and he's going to fucking pop, and it's going to rule. And a week fucking later, they're like, what if we just kick this kid out the fucking door in the most unceremonious way we can possibly imagine? And then Pat Verbeek has the fucking audacity to go on and give a quote saying, well, he really wanted to play center and pushing him to the wing wasn't working, and we think he's going to have more opportunities to play center. Motherfucker, you're the one in charge. You're the one in charge. You should get to say this. Yep, thank you. Thank you, Chad. That's exactly right. My brother in Christ, you made a decision to play him at the wing. And again, I am not trying to be a hypocrite. I was perfectly fine with the decision to play him at the wing. I have no issues with that. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think the issue wasn't that he was played at the wing. It's the way he was played at the wing. You bring in a coach who destroys this player's confidence, destroys this player's value, and you wait until the worst possible moment. Like this is literally trying to sell stock in hydrogen as the Hindenburg crashes to the fucking ground. Hiring Joe Quenneville was a ridiculous move. Trading Trevor Zegras was a ridiculous move. And he did both of them in the span of 6 weeks. And they are incongruous, which is the worst part. Doing the two things together makes no sense. Doing either one individually, you can make the argument. Doing them together is incoherent.
What's unbelievable is I think any point before the events of this offseason, if Trevor Zegras was traded, we would have been a little bit surprised, but I don't think we would have been as shocked as we were this time around. But like you said, Stephen, all those things leading up to it, the hiring of Joel Quenneville, the comments about how this roster emulates the Chicago roster he had, and Kreider coming in, and the fact that they have an interview with Alexis Downey and half the questions are about Trevor Zegras, and it just felt like everything was pointing to him staying, and then all of a sudden a trade out of nowhere. We hadn't heard anything all offseason, really anything concrete that they're shopping Trevor Zegras or that he's going to be out the door, and then we get that news from Friedman, and we're like, okay, something's going to happen, but we're not going to hear about it for the rest of the week, and it's probably going to come a draft if it comes at all, and then less than an hour later, it's out the door. It's wild how quick it all came together.
Two things to add to that. One, to the extent that we were not hearing anything about this, Canadian Nostradamus himself, Frank Saravalli, specifically took him off of a trade board, saying, oh, he's not going to get traded this offseason. Mm-hmm. His entire career, he's been put on Frank Saravalli's trade board, except for this offseason. There's a small part of me that's happy that he was dead wrong about this too, as he is with everything else. But
Congrats to John Gibson, by the way, on what I can only assume is his impending 8-year fucking extension.
how is
Fucking
Gibson
hated
outlasting Trevor Zegras is
Yeah,
hilarious
that's
to
wild.
me.
That's wild.
And then the Ducks are so like tight-fist. They don't like anything coming out to the media. And the fact that Friedman got it and was like, "Oh, it's gonna come within the week."
Bro,
I
you
at
know
least-
what? I fucking almost went to his fucking idiot kid's fucking Twitter page to be like, if something stupid's gonna happen, his moron son is gonna fucking say something.
Oh, there's something.
Is there?
There is something. It only. This is, I guess, being the last lone survivor of the Twitter website on this podcast.
Eddie's still got a foothold.
Oh, I'm on it. Oh yeah.
Okay,
And I just fucking use you like an avatar.
that's fair. So Kyle Verbeek, which is Pat's son, has been this like weird. I can only describe it as like a college football insider type deal, where like
It's
a
very
player will
college football.
commit and he posts like a gif of a white monster or something, and there's dozens of comments of these people just being like, "Oh, something's cooking, guys, something's cooking." And it's like, please calm down.
Yeah, it's White Monster. What's cooking is meth.
Easier things to make. I'm the chemist. I have to say that. It's whatever. We can get, that's another podcast. He posted like, I think it was at like 3 p.m. So like well past all this, everything's come out, everybody's had their overreactions, and he posts a image that is, I can pull it up. He posts an image that is very clearly an AI image of like somebody, like just trees in a forest, and the caption is "most can't ... some can." So apparently he now thinks he's hockey Socrates, but it's clearly he's saying
full
like,
Lane Kiffin on us.
yes. And he's,
Oh
first
my
off,
God.
do you know how easy it is to Google forest? Why do you need to make an AI image for that? But two, he like most can't, some can't. He's saying like, oh, you're not focused on the big picture. Like, look, guys, there's like a bigger thing going at play. You got to see the forest from the trees. Dog, what the hell are you talking about? And I appreciate at least Ducks fans who are in his comments just telling him like to shove it down his own throat at this point. Of there is no avenue for this trade that makes sense. There is not a super enticing offer that you could not pass up on. It is not cutting enough salary that it's going to be a actual like impact on your free agency window. There is nothing about this trade that said it had to be done today and it had to be done at this value. Mm-hmm. So the fact that you're saying this is part of a grand scheme of whatever, you're blowing smoke out of your own ass. And I'm to be as bluntly as possible. There is no significant plan unless, quite frankly, one of Jason Robertson or Mitch Marner's agent emailed them and said he is not coming to the team if that little white boy is still on it.
Right.
So unless that is the case, and it's not,
it's just
there's no grandiose plan.
There's absolutely no way to spin this Zegras trade as a precursor to something bigger. There's no way you can spin it unless like Ryan Poehling the second and the fourth are what you're sending out the door to get Jason Robinson exactly. Like there's no way, because you could have, if you wanted to spin it that way, Zegras could have been used as in a package to get a Jason Robinson, right? Like that would have made a lot more sense to be able to make that work. It would have made sense for both teams, honestly, for that to be something. The cap space, like we mentioned, $3.8 million might mean something to Dallas or to other teams, but to us it means nothing because we have over $30 million of cap space to begin with. So more than enough to go out and get Mitch Marner and anybody else you really wanted to get in free agency if you needed to. There's no logjam. There's no roster space that needs to be freed up to bring in Jason Robinson or to bring in Mitch Marner. Trevor Zegras isn't taking that spot. And if you want to argue that he's too valuable to play on the third line, if you're bringing in a Mitch Marner or a Jason
have a really
Robinson.
good third line. Just have a really good third line.
Yeah, there's no need, because then, okay, fine. You know, he's too good for your third line, but he's still a restricted free agent at the end of next season, and you can see how he does and move him. And if that's all you get in the middle of the season, then you didn't really do any worse than you were going to do now. The upside is keep him, and you might get more. Like, and your team is better for the short term. Like, it's ridiculous the way it all played out.
For the record, I need to say this every single fucking time. Not only would he have been an interesting piece to include in a Jason Robertson trade, again, given Eddy, as me and you have talked about ad nauseum on and off the pod, they need to create cap space. That's a $2 million drop, and you still keep a top six winger or player, however you want to use him. There's still a player on the roster at the end of it. You save $2 million in cap space. Whatever. Not only that, but it's just, this is the thing I have to say. The last time an NHL team made a sign and trade offer or made a sign and trade deal was when Matthew Tkachuk went to Florida. Who was the GM in Calgary who made the sign and trade for Matthew Tkachuk? It was Brad Treliving, who is the big free agent this summer that everybody is hoping Anaheim can go out and get. Mitch Marner. Where does Mitch Marner play? Well, technically he still plays for Toronto. Who is the GM in Toronto? That would be Brad Treliving. You're telling me he wouldn't be willing to be like, I can lose Marner for nothing, or I can get a pick and a good young player, or at least an interesting young player. I'm going to have another year. I can still extend him. His extension is going to come in significantly lower than Marner's current deal, unless something insane happens. Like, there is a world where he plays really well and they sign him to an 8x8. And he gets that Jack Hughes contract, and they're just like, we've got Zegras, we've got Nylander, we've got Matthews. They're able to keep Tavares. Like, there are so many fucking versions of this. We're trading him for the 45th pick, and a fourth line center is unforgivable. I'm getting so mad again.
Okay, so my two questions I would say now that Zegras is gone. There's already been enough smoke to Tavares coming over to Anaheim. I feel like this...
What? To?
John Tavares to Anaheim.
Oh, don't do this to me.
Yeah, I was waiting for that reaction.
Oh, don't do this to me.
There's smoke. I think they're listed as like the second or third most likely team to get him. There is now a roster spot where Zegras was. He's not going to play on the wing.
That's what I'm saying.
If you're making this argument about, okay, they now are prepping cap space, they now definitely have the cap space to sign like a 3-year deal for him.
Yeah, but they had the cap space before the trade. If anything, this is an Aaron Ekblad thing, which is terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, I talked myself into it. I'm good with it, but you have to move out Gudas. Mm-hmm. You have to move out Gudas, and you cannot sign him to significant term. You have to keep that deal at 4 years.
Yeah, I can't see it being Tavares just because the whole comment. Well, one, I don't see John Tavares coming and being a third line center, and Verbeek made a point to say Carlson, made a very clear point to say Carlson and McTavish are his 1-2 of the future. Was presumably one of the reasons why Trevor Zegras was shipped out the door is because they don't want to play him as a third line center. It would be, it'd be on brand right now.
Fucking depth.
It'd be on brand right now to say that and then to go and sign John Tavares to be your third line center. Like that would be something that he would do right now, but I can't see it logically it happening. But yeah, I do see it, if it is a precursor to something, if you want to use the cap space as a reason, then it is something like an Aaron Ekblad or a different position where you're going to require somebody, something like Nikolai Ehlers, which I'm not a fan of either, but something like that where you're going for two players. If you're pushing hard for Mitch Marner, and then you're looking at adding another player somewhere else to make up for the loss of Trevor Zegras. So an Ehlers or Besser, even though Besser seems like he's bound for Minnesota, but something like that, or like Steven said, an Aaron Ekblad.
And then I guess my other question. We are now down a winger. Beckett Seneca. He's in a very weird position in terms of his age and his eligibility for the OHL versus the AHL. There was already kind of a thought of, if he's good enough in camp, he may crack the roster. Is this Verbeek potentially laying out more of a runway for him to make those teams?
It frees up space for him. I hope to God the trade isn't made with that in mind, saying, oh, well, we're just going to ship Trevor Zegras out in case Beckett Seneca is ready. Because if that's like you're in a perfect situation development wise with Beckett Seneca to not make that trade, to just be like, okay, like let's give him a run. And if he does really well in camp and you still have Trevor Zegras, then worst case scenario is Beckett Seneca is your third line right wing and you're moving Alex Killorn down to the fourth line. Like that's not a bad situation to be in. And the worst case is, he's not good enough. You just send him back to junior and then you still have Trevor Zegras. So like, I hope it's not why or had any play in why the trade was made, because that puts a lot of pressure on Beckett Seneca to come up and do something this year. I think it's very borderline. He certainly has the size and skill to do well at the NHL level. I just don't know yet, and I probably would say he's not ready to take that next step. But I mean, listen, one training camp, one preseason can change everything, right? So we'll see. But it definitely provides him as a player more opportunity, at least in the short term right now. This could mean nothing if we go out and sign Mitch Marner or make a trade to bring in a top 6 forward. Then all of a sudden that space not only is gone, but the chances of him breaking into the top 6, if it's a Marner in the way versus a Zegras, are significantly less, right? So as we're recording this and talking about it, there is a better chance for him to make the roster next year.
So so the homie Josh asked me about this today. Literally, me and him were talking all day, kind of working through the trade as I was talking to both of you. And firstly, let me say, boy, community is nice. It's nice to have people that you can just text, what the fuck is happening right now? And like feel very validated about that. I really appreciated that. The thing I said is, I don't think this has any effect on Beckett Seneca. If Beckett Seneca was good, he was gonna be good enough to make the team out of camp. He was gonna be good enough to make the team out of camp. Like, I mean, you can maybe talk yourself into saying that this prevents them from being in a position to have to play Alex Killorn on the fourth line or something like that. But like ultimately, like we have one legit right shot winger. Ryan Strome seems to be the third line center. And maybe what you say is now it's a lot easier to roll Vetrano, Strome, Killorn, and you put Seneca and Terry in the top or something crazy. But here's the thing. If you go out and get Marner, you're back to putting Killorn somewhere else. Now, maybe you put Killorn back on the left or something like that, and so it takes some of that pressure off, and now you're running Cutter, Killorn, Vetrano, and Marner, Terry, Seneca. But like to me, I don't see. I don't think Trevor Zegras was stopping Beckett Seneca from making the roster. And the only way that they're related is if our dumb GM did the thing that I think the Montreal's dumb GM, and let me be very clear, I like Ken Hughes. I think he's doing a very good job in Montreal. It kills me to have to say this out loud, but I unfortunately have way too many friends now who are Montreal fans, and they've softened me to that damn team. But like he was like, oh, we could draft Demidov. We don't need Trevor Zegras. That's the dumbest fucking thing in the world to me. The idea that you wouldn't want to play like because again, if you're saying we have Demidov, we don't need Zegras, you are inherently acknowledging we look at Trevor Zegras as a dynamic offensive playmaker who can make things happen for our team in a way we don't have anybody can do. Why would you not want two of those guys? So if R&D dumb GM is doing the same thing and being like Beckett Seneca is going to be our dynamic winger playmaker and replace what we're losing in Trevor Zegras, the only way, again, that makes sense is if you're going and getting Robertson or you're going and getting Marner. And you're like, we're going to have two of them no matter what. And we think Beckett Seneca is ready to make the leap. Now, in terms of whether Seneca is ready or not, I said straight up, based on, I think he played like one preseason game last year. I was like, he doesn't look out of place to me. He doesn't look ready. Like he like physically wasn't filled out enough. He was getting pushed around, but like he very clearly knew what he was supposed to do. He was trying to do those things. He looked like a freshman basketball player to me. Like where you're just not quite ready yet. But like you could technically, if we needed you, play, and it wouldn't be the end of the world in my mind. I think Beckett Seneca makes the team out of camp this year. I think he puts them to the screws, and we start to see this team have to make some interesting decisions about him. But I hope, like Eddy said, that wasn't part of the calculus for moving on for Trevor Zegras. Because I just don't know why you wouldn't want multiple guys who can do interesting things with the puck on their stick. I don't understand that. Like, Leo Carlsson is a very interesting playmaker, but I do think part of his inherent value is more of connective tissue, right? He seems to do all the stuff between players. I think that's why he works so well with Cutter, and I think that's why, in my head, I'm still fixated on the idea of a Cutter-Leo-Terry play. Because now you've got these two guys who can drive and make plays, and then you've got Cutter who's just going to get shots up. And maybe you do the same thing with Marner, right? And you put Marner on that right side and you go, now, whatever. But like McTavish, maybe Quenneville gets more out of him. But I do think at this point we kind of know what he is, which is he's a bulldog. He's going to drive to the front of the net. He's going to drive to the center lane. He's going to get shots off. And if he has the opportunity to make a good pass by leveraging the threat of his shot, I trust him to do it. I am not down on Mason McTavish by any means. But, like, he's not a wizard in the way that Zegras was. And so, maybe Seneca is more of that wizard style and but again, like, I really hope those two things aren't connected because it feels short-sighted. And I think one of the things that we have seen over the last few years in the NHL is that redundancy is vital. The Oilers lost Zach Hyman, who was pretty good. He's a B+ player. And they were like, well, we have to play Evander Kane 35 minutes a night or we don't have anybody who can do that. That's not a good thing. You can't be defaulting to guys who are liabilities. And again, I have come on here and said it 100 times. When he is at the top of his game, I think Evander Kane is one of the best power forwards the game has seen in 10 years. He combines speed and skill and strength and nastiness in a way that is incredibly effective. He is absolutely entirely too volatile. And you saw that again with them, where they were like, well, we're playing Corey Perry on the top line now because we don't have anybody else who can do this. The value of redundancy. Florida has Barkov, and they've got Lundell, and they've got Bennett, and they've got Luosterainen. They've just got guys who are going to go out and break heads. They have Ekblad, and they have Jones, and they have Forsland. Like, they've just got like, it would feel very short-sighted and a little too, it feels like getting a little too cute with roster construction, when at the end of the day, the players you should be the players you're trying to upgrade and replace should be Vetrano, Strome, and Killorn. You shouldn't be moving out, Gudis, even Trouba. fucking Cam Fowler, John Gibson. These older guys are the ones you should be starting to cycle out if you feel that you want to make upgrades. I'm fine with keeping those guys. They have value. But to decide that we're done with a 23-year-old who we can very clearly explain why his play started to go down. Like, I don't... I want to. I guess this is the final thing I'll say about this, and then I really will shut the fuck up about this. There seems to be two trains of thought in why the Zegras thing hasn't worked the last couple of years. One is he was never that good to begin with. Bad team, someone's got to score points. Okay, fair enough. That's an interesting thought. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and like we've seen guys do that, right? Jacob Chikrin, like we've seen guys just have a little bit more opportunity than they would get on other teams, and they're able to produce. The other is, he's hurt and he's not getting back to it, right? Like he's kind of lost it. And like, again, he got hurt because he rushed back, because he was in contract negotiations with Verbeek that dragged out, because Verbeek was playing hardball with him. And again, I respect Verbeek's right to play hardball. But when that hardball causes it, because again, you bring in Greg Cronin, who's Mr. fucking hard ass. Trevor's trying to come back in. He's trying to get acclimated. He's trying to do everything right so he can get back to playing and helping this team win. And he gets fucking hurt. And then he plays 2 years hurt. He produces poorly. We see his game take some steps here and some steps backwards in other places, right? It's very stuttering and inconsistent. And you fucking penalize him by shipping him out the door. Like, I don't... Again, I just keep returning to, this just feels like an embarrassing process for the organization. And I really do want to know what, if any, say Joe Quenneville had in this, because again, why wouldn't he want Trevor fucking Zegras? I don't get it.
One of the comments that you had there kind of ties in with one thing I wanted to mention before we moved on to it too. Is again, I fully know I could be reading too much into one quote from Verbeek here, but when you're talking about roster construction and getting too cute with it and trying to kind of mold things the way you want it before you've even gotten to that point. One of the quotes that Verbeek had was saying with Kreider and Poehling that they're more physically mature players, and that's part of the chemistry and the makeup that he's trying to get accomplished, and that they're great fits for the team. That's essentially, in a cute way of not trying to reveal too much, is saying why he got rid of Trevor Zegras is he's just trying to build a bit more of a physical, experienced team. Sure, if that's what you want to do, great. But if we're looking at the long-term picture of this offseason, and if we're tying the success of this offseason to bringing in Mitch Marner or that level of player, and if Mitch Marner is the big fish this offseason, well, if we get Mitch Marner, then that quote's a lie. Because Mitch Marner...
Robertson, that quote's a lie.
Yeah, the criticism of Marner a lot of times in Toronto is he's not physically mature enough for the playoffs. And if you're going to come out and in a roundabout way, say the reason that you brought in Kreider and Poehling and gotten rid of Trevor Zegras is because you're trying to build this type of team, you can't then go acquire Marner and that to be true. So then, great, we've acquired Mitch Marner, but Pat Verbeek's come out to the media and just blatantly lied about the reason why he's acquired these players and gotten rid of Trevor Zegras. Sure, and like you said, Jason Robinson as well. That, again, could be reading too much into one quote. Certainly, that is definitely possible. But it gives me some concerns for the bigger plan and picture of this offseason. If he is being genuine there, and that is true, then Mitch Marner is not on the table. And like you said, Jason Robinson, if they view him as that type of player, is not on the table. So then what else is there left to do? Because we've talked about is really those are the only two high-profile, top 6 elite players that you can realistically acquire this offseason unless something comes out of nowhere. And now with Zegras gone, like that has to happen for Anaheim this offseason to have any success or any steps forward. They need to get a player like that. And they needed a player like that before Trevor Zegras was gone, but now they really need a player like that. And if, again, Mitch Marner's not a physically mature player, if that's what you're looking for, he's gone. Jason Robinson's gone. What do you do now? Who do you go and acquire? Unless it's somebody we're just not thinking of and it comes out of nowhere, great. But, and even the other guys in free agency, Nikolai Ehlers is in that, Brock Besser is in that. Like, what are you doing?
There's one guy, and I brought him up to you last time, Eddie. There's one guy. If you want to go do something fucking weird, there's one guy. You go and you call Ottawa.
Oh, Brady Tkachuk, right. Yeah.
Oh, that's a face. Chad.
I just don't want to look at Brady Tkachuk. He's a visibly disgusting person to look at.
His brother did get all the looks and charm. You can't
Absolutely.
say he didn't.
My thing too with that again is like my argument with what do you do with the Jason Robinson trade in terms of return now? Because like getting Jason Robinson is great, but now the organization's not really in a position to send Troy Terry out the door for Jason Robinson because again you've now lost a Trevor Zegras. You can still do it, and it's still a good trade. It's just it's less flexible now because we're building rosters around. Okay, if Terry goes, you still have Zegras, and you still got a lot of good young players in the mix. Robinson makes the team better. He's better than Troy Terry. But the same is like for Brady Tkachuk. Like Ottawa's not sending him out the door without getting something in return. They're a team that's looking to acquire players to get into the playoffs and be a better team. They're not selling him straight for prospects and picks this offseason. So again, the name that comes to the forefront of what would a team like Ottawa want if they're getting rid of Brady Tkachuk? Well, if it's not Trevor Zegras because he's gone, and you're saying you're keeping Carlson, you're keeping McTavish, Carter Gauthier is part of this team for the future, then it's Troy Terry. And then we're right back in the same predicament. Okay, well, you're moving Troy Terry and bringing in Brady Tkachuk, but is the team that much better? Yes, Brady Tkachuk is a better player than Troy Terry, but it's not the same of going out and signing Mitch Marner or signing a free agent and keeping the rest of that team intact. So we're just right back in that same circle again, and it all revolves around the fact that you just sent out a potential top six forward for absolutely nothing. And now you've put yourself in this weird position where there is not a lot of ways you can come out of this offseason now as a winner in the eyes of the fans. You've just really handcuffed yourself. And it's crazy to think, like, even signing Mitch Marner or trading for Jason Robinson, it's much harder to look like you've come ahead now because you've made this trade.
It's the same fucking thing I said with the Quenneville hire. You're making your margin of error smaller for no real reason. Like, bro, you got to make the playoffs, and you can't get fucking embarrassed. You've got to win 2 games in the playoffs. If this is what you're going to fucking do, you got to go win 2 games in the playoffs. You can't miss the playoffs next year.
One of my other thoughts, and after this we'll get to questions, is if this entire offseason Verbeek is preaching, we need to get to the playoffs, we need to finally make the playoffs. Can you honestly look at this trade and say we're better today than we were at this morning? No, you can't. And in terms of like, can you trade for like a Brady Tkachuk? Okay, if you ship out Terry, it's no longer is Brady Tkachuk an upgrade over Terry. It's is Brady Tkachuk an upgrade over the aggregate of Trevor Zegras and Troy Terry. You can't say that. Like, you just punted this player who has top 6 upside, who has all-star upside, and you can't look at your fan base. Sure, you can make an argument that Trevor Zegras his style of play may not win you a playoff game. I don't agree with that, but if everybody is truly trying to chase the Panthers, then you can say he doesn't play the Panthers way, therefore the Panthers are the only team I've ever watched win a playoff game, so therefore the Ducks won't win a playoff game with Trevor Zegras. You still need to get to the playoffs. Yeah, and he helps you get to the playoffs.
No, it's exactly what you're saying. It's fucking guy who's only seen one movie. I'm getting a lot of vibes from this. It's that fucking joke. You know, guy who's only seen 2 playoff runs. I'm getting real Florida Panthers vibes from this fucking team.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I keep cutting this off. I really am.
No, but it's like even now, like, is this team any better than they were last year? Where the swap is you've added Chris Kreider, you've gotten rid of Trevor Zegras. At the absolute best, it's a lateral move. Like,
I'll say this. Ryan Poehling is a better option than Nikita Nesterenko and Jansen Harkins.
Yeah.
Again,
I don't hate bringing in Ryan Poehling.
But there's no world in which you, as a real fucking grown adult, can look at this team and go, I mean, look, we lost the one player who you saw. Like, you noted, like, it was visible how different the team looked when he was out there. I'm fucking done, man. I'm done. I'm over it.
All right, let's get
so
into the
right
questions because we'll
Go to
run in
questions.
circles about how much we hated this. So
Well, it's going to come up with the questions.
yeah.
First one, I think one of the more common responses, Ash at Josh Git 1987, is Verbeek out of his mind?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he might be.
Okay.
I really think he might be.
At 410_315, should we fire Verbeek before next offseason? I think if he is truly dead set on making the playoffs and we miss the playoffs, you're gone, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's
set
fair.
your own deadline.
You got to see how the season goes for sure, but yeah, and especially if you miss it by a mile too, like it's a no-brainer for me. That's the stipulation, and he's done it to himself. It's not like we're all labeling saying this is a playoff team next year. Like he said again, even today, that the ownership expects this team to make the playoffs next season. And if you don't do that, then you've not only failed the fan base and you've come out and failed your own expectations, you failed the owner's expectations. If anything, you failed the fans, you failed the owner, and you failed yourself. Like you're gone. There's nothing left to fail at.
Who are we if we are not supposed to take you at your word? Like
Yeah.
you tell us playoffs. If you don't get playoffs, why are you still the GM?
You fire the coach, and now it's on him. He's fired his coach. He's brought in his own guy. You can't fire Quenneville at the end of next season.
No. He's brought in his second guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
He's the second guy, but it's his real guy now.
Reminding everybody, Dallas Aikens got 2 60-point fucking seasons out of Trevor Zegras. Dallas fucking Aikens, who everyone is convinced couldn't coach a hockey team out of a wet paper bag, 2 60-point fucking seasons. And better finishes in the standings.
Yeah.
No, that's not true.
I don't think it's
first
Leo
season.
was second. That was his
first season with the Mintikov year.
Right, 10. And then his second season was the Leo year.
Yeah.
And then, because Cronin's played 2 years. Both of Cronin's years coaching were with Leo.
Yes.
So, whatever. You want to know what's
yeah.
really fucking stupid? Real quick, before Chad gets back to questions, is that NCAA College Football 25 doesn't call the Oregon State rivalry the Civil War. They just call it the Oregon State rivalry.
Oh, they don't even call it the Platte?
No, it's the Oregon because it's the Civil War. That's the name of it.
It used to be Civil War. They got rid of it because of...
You can't say that because of woke. So.
Yeah.
The fan name for it, though, and I have Oregon State friends and Oregon fans, they call it the Platte because it's the exact in-between of a beaver and a duck.
Yeah.
They call it the Platte.
That rules. That's awesome. That's very cool. What's next?
Next up, at the Ducks coach. We hate the Kreider acquisition more without Zegras. I do. ... From an emotional standpoint, yes, because now I just feel like we found a puzzle piece that had a perfect fit, and then we took the original puzzle piece and we threw it in the trash.
Yeah, like you said, emotionally sure, but I still think the acquisition of Chris Kreider makes sense still for all the reasons it made sense before. And losing Trevor Zegras doesn't change that. It just it changes things on the Zegras side more than the Kreider side, because we all, like you said, wow, okay, Chris Kreider's here, Trevor Zegras has to stay now, his buddy's here. Everything points to him staying, and now he's gone. So it makes less sense on the Zegras side than the Kreider side.
He didn't even get 2 weeks with Kreider.
Yeah.
He got 11 days.
Unreal.
Okay. At Juan Ochoa, how does Verbeek turn this around? What does he need to do to save face? Do you think Quenneville had that much say in the Z trade? I think we've already kind of answered the...
He needs a big move. That's what Verbeek does.
He needs multiple big moves. That's the problem.
If he does not
he needs
land
fucking
either...
Eddy's pipe dream to happen now.
Yeah.
if he does not land one of Robertson or Marner, I think you can say this is in the offseason that's been touted as Verbeek's most important offseason of his career. If he does not get one of Robertson or Marner, unequivocally, it is a failure of an offseason.
Not only that, too, it's not even like fans are drawing this up saying the Ducks are interested in Robertson and Marner. Like, there's legitimate reports that the Ducks are interested in Mitch Marner and are in a position where they can offer him a lot of money and term. And reports about Jason Robertson that the Ducks would be interested in bringing him from legitimate sources. So it's not even like we're just speculating this and there's nothing behind it. Like, there are grounds behind it. So to come out of the offseason where you have been legitimately linked to these guys and to not get it done is significantly more disappointing than for us to make it up and say, oh, the Ducks are going to go for, Connor McDavid, and it doesn't happen, because that was never going to happen, right? Like, there's actually legitimate sources behind this saying that they have a chance and they should be in the race, and then to lose that race and everything else leading up to that is complete failure.
I mean, Merrick said it in his podcast immediately after the Zegras trade happened, where he was like, are they trying to free up some more cap space to potentially offload something, maybe with the team that wears green, obviously alluding to a Robertson deal.
Yeah.
Look, if he goes out and gets Jason Robertson, you have at least done the thing and replaced. Again, like, there is a part of this all that the general perception of Trevor Zegras has taken a significant hit over the last couple of years. We all have our own reasons for why we think that's happened and such. But I think we have to be honest and say, if you said we lost Trevor Zegras to get Jason Robertson, that's a win. It's not great, it's not fun, but that is a improvement in a meaningful way. You have taken someone who you think can be an 80-plus, potentially 100-point winger, who can help put this team firmly in the middle of the playoff race and in a championship hunt. And you've said, we've got that guy now. We definitely have that guy. And so if you do that, that's good. The problem now is, what is the additional cost of going and getting Jason Robertson? And if Jason Robertson costs you Trevor Zegras and Troy Terry, it's hard not to feel like you got worked a little bit. If he goes out and he trades 10 and he trades Gaucher. Oh, the other thing I will say, Eddie, what you were talking about with the physicality and the physical maturity, I do think Beckett Seneca is now officially safe. I don't think many of us thought he was available in trades. But, if you were being honest and saying you have to give to get and teams have traded bigger players, Beckett Seneca was the top prospect we had outside of guys already on the roster. So I think, given the comments about the physicality, we know Seneca just had a great playoff run. He used his physicality. He's growing into his body. They did the same thing with him that they did with Leo Carlsson, where if you every third word of the interview after the draft is growth spurt, growth spurt, growth spurt. I think Beckett Seneca is definitively safe now. So now it's just a waiting game and allowing him to develop and join this roster when he's ready. But what does that mean? Does that mean that you're now looking at Olin Zellweger or Tristan Luneau and multiple first-round picks or conditional first-round picks? Like, it's 10 this year and the 2027 second, but if Jason Robertson receives multiple heart votes, it becomes a first-round pick. Like, again, that's fine. I think that trade is worth it. But you're just continuing to spend assets in a way that it will catch up to you at a certain point. So I do think he needs to have multiple big moves this summer. I think it'll be very hard for him to stand in front of a group of Anaheim fans now and go, look, we called all the agents, we put all the offers, we were in the final mix, and we just didn't get them. That's not good enough now. That is officially not good enough.
Yeah, I think like the weird thing, the whole weird situation with Robinson and Marner and the Ducks and everything now is that, like, listen, if you can get Jason Robinson without having to give up a significant roster player. I don't care what it costs. Significant roster player and your top prospect, do it and run away with it immediately. Like if it's costing you first round picks, future first round picks, some players you can afford to give up. Like we can all sit here and say we can afford to give up Olin Zellweger when you have Jackson Lacombe, Pavel Minchikov, and Steven Solberg on your roster. It sucks. I like the player, but you can afford to do so. And if you can get a player of Jason Robinson's caliber and it's not going to cost you Troy Terry, then you get that done immediately. Because literally as of yesterday or the last time we recorded this, I was dead set that the Stars will have to get a top 6 forward in return for Jason Robinson. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense for them to move him. But then all of a sudden, it comes into the mix that the Stars like Marner, and Marner likes the Stars.
Really likes the Stars.
And now it's a whole different situation for them that they might talk themselves into, well, we like Rantanen and Marner better than we like Rantanen and Robertson and the rest of what we have here. And if we can make that work, then we'll get it done. But now you're just stuck in this 3-way contingency here that you're not going to get a trade for Robinson done until the Stars know that they're going to be able to get a deal done for Mitch Marner. So this is something that doesn't happen until July 1st anyway, when the Stars can officially have conversations with Mitch Marner, get something verbally in place that he will sign with them as long as they can move Robinson out, have the cap space to do so, and then one domino falls and the rest, everything lands in place. But now you're just kind of stuck waiting for other things to happen. And if you're Anaheim and you're hinging your offseason on either Marner or Robertson, it's not really a comfortable place to be where you're waiting for both of those situations kind of to resolve themselves before you can do anything. And it just takes one team to come in and throw a wrench in that. Vegas moves enough cap space and Marner decides to go there. Then all of a sudden the Stars aren't moving Robinson and you're just left standing with nothing, right? Like that's the tough game that you're playing now, that no matter what offer that Verbeek puts in front of the Stars right now for Robinson, I don't think they take it until they know they're for sure that they're getting a Mitch Marner, because it makes no sense for them to move him for assets that aren't going to immediately improve that team, or at least close to a lateral move like Troy Terry, unless they know for sure they're getting an elite replacement. So now you're just stuck in this weird spot where you're relying on other people to get the rest of the work done before you can do your own work.
It would be, in terms of like a long play, it would be kind of insane if the end result of this is the Ducks end up playing, because they now have so much cap space, they end up playing like a power broker, and the cost of them doing that to relieve Dallas of so much cap space is we get Robertson so they can get Marner. I think that's not to be rude to people. Pat Verbeek is a hockey player. I don't think he thinks that far in advance. I don't think he can play that level of chess. Maybe he can. I don't know. But he's taken enough hits. He's doled out enough hits. I don't think his brain's going to work that way. And that's a whole other thing. I will, however, if we do end up getting Jason Robertson, I will be doing the thing that delusional Philly fans are doing, in which just combining the two trades and just saying, if you really think about it, giving up Cutter Gauthier and getting back Zegras and Draisaitl, that's a decent trade. I will be lumping all these transactions together as if I sent off Zegras.
The moment it pays off, that's what you do. That's just good.
You start coping.
The weird thing about this too is like we're all saying that 10th overall would be involved in a trade for Jason Robinson, but if you can't make this trade until July 1st, then you can't trade 10th overall because you're stuck having to draft him. So maybe it could be future first, but
it could also just be like, hey, we'll draft at 10 Roger McQueen. Yeah. And then when it comes time July 1st, we're like, hey, we know you liked Roger McQueen. That's basically you just traded for the 10th pick. Like, you can do like one of those. It happens a lot in the NBA during draft day, in which the team will call the other team and just say, Kevin Love, Trae Young, Luka Doncic. You'll call the other teams like, who do you want us to pick with this pick? Like, maybe that happens. I don't know.
This just feels we're getting so elaborate for hockey that it's just
exactly
as we add more layers, it just becomes it just gets to this level of.
If all of this truly connects, it's blowing out the Brian Burke getting both the Sedin twins draft day out of the water.
It's unbelievable.
Actually, the last NBA player that if I'm remembering right, the last NBA player who actually was involved in we're going to draft this guy and then we'll just make the trade after? Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander was technically drafted by the Charlotte. I think at that point they were the Bobcats. Was technically drafted by the Bobcats, and or were they the Hornets? No, they were the Bobcats. I'm pretty sure. Whatever. Shut up, dude. But no, yeah, he was drafted by them at 12, and then they traded or at 11, and then they traded with 12, something like that. But yeah, look, if it all works out where we are on the good end of getting the Shea Gilgeous-Alexander trade, I'll be very happy.
I mean, ideally, we see the Stars move something for Mitch Marner's UFA rights this week, and just know that things are in the works, and then you have some semblance of hope that they're at least able to have discussions with this guy, and that makes it a little bit closer than re-signing him, and then you can see your Jason Robinson trade before July 1st. But again, it's another wrinkle of another thing that has to happen before it even becomes a possibility for the Ducks to even be involved. Other teams have to do something else before they can even get involved in the discussions.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We got 2 more for questions. At Matt Coots _, why didn't we throw Gibson into the Zegras deal to end the trade rumors surrounding him too? We know he wants to start to let him start somewhere. I don't think the Philly was going to take on Gibson, and I think at this point Gibson would not have accepted a trade to Philly.
Oh, I think he would have.
I think it's just a whole another wrinkle of listen, if you're Danny Briere too, I don't think you're looking at receiving that trade from Pat Verbeek and saying, listen, let's pump the brakes here and add John Gibson to this. You're taking that and running to the registry and getting it done, and then if you want John Gibson, you can figure out in a separate trade later. It just doesn't feel like something that needed to get done in a move like this. And again, from everything that the Ducks have said, they don't want to move him for nothing. They feel like they're only going to move him if they get what they deem fair value for him, which seemingly is a lot. The fact that he's still in Anaheim at this point, and they're more than comfortable rolling into next season with Lucas Dostal and John Gibson making a significant amount of money because they have the cap space to do so. So it just didn't feel like there's no easy way to just fit John Gibson in any trade, the way the Ducks are going about this and what they think his value is.
John Gibson for Ryan Poehling. Who says no?
Yeah. Okay. Last one from at Brian Baston, everybody's favorite Predators fan. Mm-hmm. Please tell me what would be on the perfect breakfast burrito. A little bit of brevity.
Do they have breakfast burritos in Canada? Are you allowed to eat those up there?
Yeah, but it's not as prevalent. We don't have a lot of places that have breakfast burritos on the menu. We got a lot of breakfast here, quick breakfast, 90% Tim Hortons, which is just garbage food. So, and there's no breakfast. I mean, I think they might have a breakfast burrito now, but it's not.
They call it a wrap. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's not a. They've thrown green peppers on there and called it a breakfast burrito, right? It's not. It's not a breakfast burrito by any means.
Yeah,
I think your options are significantly more than what I have.
What do you got, Chad? What's on your perfect breakfast burrito?
Okay. Start with a base of just scrambled eggs with spinach.
What?
Yeah. And then turkey bacon, hash brown, and then just
Are you the one between the two of us who lives in Santa Monica? What the fuck is this? Turkey bacon?
I'm Jewish. I can't eat pork.
All right. I forgot about that. That's fair.
I can't eat pork.
Wait, does that mean you can't put cheese on your breakfast burrito?
If there's beef, then no. But if there's poultry, you're fine.
Okay. I really did forget the part where you're Jewish, and so it is turkey sausage or turkey bacon. That's fair. I'll shut up. I'm sorry.
Yep.
That's my bad. It's like, damn, dude, fucking spinach in your eggs and turkey sausage. That's some Erewhon shit.
Get the iron in.
Yeah, hey, look, I'm not gonna say I don't like spinach. I'm not crazy. Chad's eating a breakfast burrito and his forearms get 6 times bigger. He just starts beating up other sailors. I mean, look, hash browns, scrambled eggs, ham, bacon, breakfast sausage, avocado, red salsa, and cheese, and you're well on your way to happy. That being said, a simple chorizo burrito with sour cream inside is actually delicious. If anybody listening to me lives within range of an Alberto's, go to Alberto's, get the chorizo and egg burrito, and add sour cream. I did not like the idea of it the first time somebody told me about it. They were right. It's delicious. Now I want a burrito.
All right. Are we
So
good?
okay, so I want to ask this, and I'm going to throw this to you too, because this is we were planning to do this before the world went to hell in a handbasket today. I really think the ultimate question for me now is do they have to trade the 10 pick, or should they make the 10 pick? Like, does this trade affect what happens with that 10 pick now to you guys? Like, how much does this trade today impact how they behave with that 10 pick?
So I was already leaning towards, with this 10 pick, you should take a forward. I think this heightens that because you do now have the most obvious hole is a right-handed defenseman. I think we can all agree on that. And there's only really one that's going to be available at the range that we're at, potentially. I've always been of the opinion you take the offense when you can. And especially with losing Trevor, I think it now kind of expedites the issue of you take a winger or you take a center at 10.
Yeah, I don't think it changes if you should trade it or not. I think the goal, regardless of trading or keeping the 10 pick, remains the same, of just doing something big this offseason. And if it includes trading the 10 pick to do so, then obviously you do it. But I don't think the Zegras trade heightens that necessarily. But like Chad said, I think it does affect, if you do make the selection, what you do. Not majorly, because the options still are the options that are there, and it was primarily forwards to begin with, other than Murtka and Aitchison. If you're going to take defensemen, and Aitchison for me doesn't make a ton of sense because you have a bunch of left-handed defensemen already in the organization.
Correct.
And if you want to,
Steven. Correct, Steven.
I can't wait for him to explain this, because he just told me today that he was all on the Aitchison train. So
Yep.
I can't wait for that. But yeah, Murtka, like I could buy into it as an organizational fit. I do like the player, but it does feel a bit of a project, and I don't know. I could buy into it, but I do think, yeah, you can lean forward. And more than anything, the Zegras situation for me starts to look like you could lean winger. So you could go an Eklund now if you wanted to, if you really liked the player, because there is a fit for it now, where before it's okay, there's a bit of a logjam. There still is, but Zegras going out just opens up a little bit more space for that, where you could buy into that. Whereas before this trade, I would have said there's probably no chance it's Eklund, and that could still be the case. But I think it opens up that possibility a bit more than anything. But yeah, I mean, the primary options there are all centers. Jake O'Brien, Brady Martin, Roger McQueen, those are all centers that are available there, and that's probably the direction I would imagine they go in.
So do you think, regardless, that 10 pick needs to be used to achieve something significant, whether that's a high upside pick or a major trade?
My thought with any draft pick at any point is you just take whoever you think has the highest upside, regardless of the situation. It doesn't always shape out that way, and a lot of times you'll take positional need over the highest upside. But the Ducks are, I think, in a position right now where, regardless of what you think, all the narratives going around about any player in the draft. I think you just take whoever you think is an organization has the highest upside of any player available at 10. Is that Roger McQueen? Is that Merca? Is that Eklund? Is that Jake O'Brien? Whoever it is, that's what you do. You take a swing on the highest upside. Question marks regardless. Just take that player that you think is going to be the best down the road, because that's what the Ducks need right now. Is they need hits on high upside players, not just other pieces that can fit in the roster. We have kind of the shape of the core that we know what we're going to have moving forward. But if we're not going out and getting a Marner or Robinson this offseason, Beckett Seneca is really the only high upside player you have in your pool right now. You got to get another one of those guys in there, and I don't think you can play it safe with the way the Ducks are, the way the organization is shaped out right now.
I think I do think you have to include Terrence Smith in your list of high upside picks. I do think that is a player, but the problem is he's a defenseman. But I do think he's a player that if he hits the way the franchise drafted him to hit, that's a dynamic puck mover. You know what I mean? Like, again, like they were calling him Baby KO for a reason. Like, I think that's a guy that you can be very interested in projecting as being a potential difference maker.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I love him. I love Solberg. I love Luneau. I love those guys. But the when we're talking about like high upside elite potential, like it's Seneca. And then if you're taking whoever you're taking at 10, you want whoever it is. I'm getting, they might not have the same potential as Seneca because Seneca goes third overall, but you're taking whoever you believe can have the best outcome, regardless of the concerns of how they're going to get there. If you think this guy is going to be the best player of the rest remaining, you take him.
Yeah.
And then you take the risk of whatever those risks are, skating, off-ice issues, whatever. I don't know, whatever it is, right? Competitiveness, off-ice issues might be a stretch. But you know what I'm saying? Like if whatever the issue may be about the player, if you think regardless that they can have the potential to be the best of the rest remaining, you take that guy.
All right, here's the question I want to ask you guys now, and we'll start with Chad. Chad, who is the player that if they drafted you would be the most concerned about? Like to you, you did it again, bud. We can't hear you. Did your headphones die? No, because you can still hear us because you went to answer the question. Oh, he's got a real microphone this time. Wow, look at him, bro. He leveled up.
Okay, now
we're good.
now the audio is from my head.
My AirPods. Now it should be back to the mic.
There we are. You're good.
Yep, you're
Okay,
good.
we're back to the mic. Okay.
Yep. Oh, you're good.
All right. So, who is the player you would be the most concerned? Like, who is the red flag pick?
Either one of Jackson Smith or Aitchison, just because of left-handed defensemen. Like, I think they will both be available at 10, and if we do end up taking either of them, we're adding now to a fifth left-handed defenseman, sixth if, like what Steven just said, if you covet Terrence Smith, there's just not enough spots on the roster for these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be a disservice, and I understand, like, Aitchison is a awesome highlight watch. If you just want to feel like old school hockey, look up his highlights on YouTube, and he's awesome to watch. But I just don't, like, if we ended up taking another left-handed defenseman, it's just truly, like, does Verbeek know what's in the prospect system at this point? That would be my biggest concern. Just another left-handed defenseman.
What about for you, Eddie?
Yeah, I would say those, but just to not answer it the same. It's maybe not an unfair comparison, but I would say Brady Martin because he gives me like Tyler Boucher vibes for the Sens when they took him. I think Brady Martin is a better player, but we're starting to look at the reason you're drafting was you just like his compete and his work ethic and everything. When there's just significantly more talented players around him, and it's great. Like he's projectable to the NHL. He's a safer pick for sure. You can see where he's going to fit into an organization. And, you know, maybe for a team like Boston or Philly who feels like they're right on the cusp of making it back to the playoffs, and if you think he can make it there sooner rather than later and fill in like a depth role on your team, that's great. But for Anaheim, it's a bit concerning because I don't see as much of the upside as the rest of the guys that are there. And it just worries me that, you're taking this guy at 10, and then down the road, we're getting into that territory. Again, unfair comparisons of saying like a Nick Ritchie or Tyler Boucher, because I think Brady Martin is better than them, but where it just doesn't warrant the 10th overall, right? And then you look at some of the other guys that were taken, and you're like, man, what if we had have taken that guy? I think that's the territory you get in with Brady Martin. And listen, if Utah takes him at 4, you certainly get into that territory where you're looking at the rest of these guys a few years down the road saying, man, I mean, we like this kid, but holy, like, this is what we could have got.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be very hard if Brady Martin is there at 10 for Verbeek not to take him.
Yeah,
just based on the build, what he wants to build this roster off of. Also, he's another Canadian farm boy like Verbeek was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the concerning part.
I'll be honest with you, man. Like, this is going to be really funny, but like, I do think the red flag pick for me is now Aitchison. Because
what did Ron Ubel on?
You texted me something very differently this morning.
Yeah.
When did I text you that? Before or after the Trevor Zegras trade? That's my point. Aitchison, was it you, Eddie, who texted me like a week and a half ago? This is your dude. Like, you're gonna love this fucking guy. And
I think
sent
so.
Me the snapshot of Keyshawn Aitchison.
Yeah,
you're not wrong, bro. I love everything about it. Listening to the PDO cast, right? They're doing their mock draft. They're talking about it. They're saying, I think it was Cam Robinson who said, "This is your Gudis replacement, and this is a baby Kevin Bieksa." Bro, I'm all in. Right? He put up 20 goals this year. Goal scoring from the blue line is, hard to maintain year over year. We know that kind of stuff, right? It could be fluky. It's juniors. Weird things happen.
Yeah.
But his ability to like engage physically, play well, like he's got playmaking in him, right? All of those things are still incredibly attractive to me. However, now after trading Trevor Zegras, I'm really worried that our guy has a type in a way that is concerning, right? At this point, it becomes you're specifically just drafting guys to beat up other people, and you do still have to go win a hockey game. That's my issue. I love Keyshawn Aitchison. I would, if we traded for another fucking pick out of nowhere and we could get him and somebody else, I'm in. But like at this point, I think I would be concerned that we are specifically drafting for the ship. Like I would be very concerned that the decision-making process now is we really need to be the Florida Panthers in a way that, yeah, I'm just repeating myself, but in a way that I think would be genuinely concerning. And I'm really bummed about that because I really like that player profile. I really like what he had the opportunity to be. I think he's a guy who may be similar to like Caden Gooley, where you're like, he can play on his offside. He can provide a defensive pairing for one of our talented young offensive left-hand shots. Like, there's a lot there. Hell, if you want to tell me that you have a Aitchison-Luneau pairing down the line, I'm interested in that, right? That's a very exciting thing. We saw, again, with Quenneville, how long is he going to be here? It's hard to say. Brent Seabrook was one of his favorite fucking players, right? You know what I mean? And Brent Seabrook played that same way where he had 1 year where he like led the league in overtime goals because he was just out there all the time. He was physical. He was steady. He was paired with Duncan Keith. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not stupid. Like, I understand what was happening, but there's just, I really like Sean Aitchison. I really, really do. Mm-hmm. And I'm very bummed that one of the things that was taken away from me today, like, I'm not being funny. When the trade dropped, I had brought up his highlight reel. And I was just going to sit there and watch it. I was so excited. And then everything went down. And then my day went sideways otherwise. But also, like, just the way it went down with the Trevor Zegras stuff, I was sick. And I was just like, I'm not doing this, man. I don't give a shit.
It's like how you hate a restaurant once you get broken up inside that restaurant.
Yeah, dude, it's exactly what it is. Like, that's my favorite place to get fajitas, and I can never go inside again. Yeah, no, 100%. That's exactly what it was. And so I think that, that for me, like, he is now gone from I'm extremely in to that's my red flag pick, and that's a bummer.
I'd agree with a lot of what you said about Caden Aitchison Kayshawn Aitchison and his fit if we didn't have Steen Solberg in the organization.
That's the other thing is I do think it's fair, but again, like
yeah,
like
you like to have more than one, but I mean you can just take Merca right there, who's roughly a similar profile as a right shot defenseman if you want.
Merca ain't gonna be there.
Yeah, he won't because
he's going to be
he's a 6'6" right-handed defenseman. Somebody's going to take him.
Yeah, he's this year's Siljobs.
Yeah, I do have, when we eventually get to it, I have a like 3rd/4th round defenseman that I think would scratch that itch for you, Steven.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got him, but I think he's probably late for a second, which means we won't get him. But one thing I want to point out too is that the comment from Verbeek about what they would do if they were going to pick at 10 is that they are comfortable with the depth that they have and that they can take a big swing at a player they think has the most upside. So hopefully that means again, it could mean nothing, but that you avoid the organizational fit type of thing or the player you think fits this way you're building the roster now, and you just take the player you think has the most upside. Again, for Verbeek, that could just mean I like the way Brady Martin plays more than anybody else, so I'm just going to take him if he's there. But for me, actually, we'll get to this later because I have a player I think that screams, but I think we probably have a couple more questions before we get there.
I guess, who is the most interesting pick for you guys at 10?
I think the most interesting one is probably the guy I just kind of avoided mentioning, but it's Roger McQueen in terms of just him missing so much time and what he could be, right? If before the season, there was a lot of talk that this guy could be in the conversation with Misa and Schaefer and Hagens as a top player fighting for maybe not one overall, but in that mix with those guys. Competing for the top 4 spot, and then the back injury took him out for a while, and he came back and he looked good, but it wasn't certainly at the level everybody expected of him. And I think that's the most interesting one because everybody else has kind of gotten enough time to know what they are, and it's when we look at the shuffling between 4 and 10, it's more of preference or what guy you think is slightly better than the other guy, or in some cases for some of these teams, organizational fit. And then McQueen's just that one who sticks out as he's still just kind of sticking around here despite playing 20 games this year because he was talented enough to be in this conversation. And people are just intrigued of the potential there for a guy who's as big as he is that can move the way he does and stick handle the way he does. So he's the most interesting one for me just because there's obviously the upside and the potentials there. There just wasn't enough footage of him this year to know what you really have.
If McQueen plays a full season, he is not available at 10. I think that is what everybody is kind of realizing. And I will go a step further. If Caden Lindstrom plays more than 2 playoff games this season, he's probably not going to be there at 10. But because he's been so scared off of that, and because everybody's terrified of a 17-year-old, 18-year-old who had back injuries, his stock has fallen. He says, and all the medicals apparently are coming up clean. Obviously, I don't see any of those records, so I can't attest to them. But if the organization seems fine with it, he seems like a good enough pick. It helps that all of the smoke from the Ducks seems to be pointing towards him. Verbeek's comments were specifically about we're going to go for the highest upside pick. I mentioned this to you, Steven. I think I tweeted it from the Anaheim Calling account. McQueen was brought out on a sneaky dinner pre-combine with the Ducks. The Ducks don't really do dinners at the combine. And then suspiciously after that happened, McQueen gets interviewed at the combine and gets asked for his player comp, and he says Ryan Getzlaf. In my mind, that is, a kid was just brought out to dinner. The Ducks are like, hey, we're interested in you. And he told his agent, and his agent's like, schmooze it up as much as you can. Get these people to want you. I think 10 is about where he would be projected. It wouldn't surprise me if a team like a Boston or something is like, screw the medicals. We know, We did so much homework of this guy from like last year. Let's just go forward and say, let's pick him. And then that causes like a weird shuffling. I think 10 is an appropriate time to grab him. I think he will be there. And I do think if Verbeek is being held to his word, and with all like the smoke from this, and that's one of the things I'm a bit hesitant on, the Ducks are not this team that parades around and reveals their hand in terms of the draft. They just haven't been that. So I don't know if this is like a weird double bluff or if I'm thinking too much into this now, but it does seem like a betting favorite would be Roger McQueen at 10.
Is Roger McQueen good enough that you would give up the 45 pick to trade up to 7 or 8 to make sure you got him?
No. It's such a jumbled mess between really 4 and 10 that I think whoever you get within there, you could make an argument that they could be the best player of the bunch that outside of that top 3. So I'm not super concerned with trading up unless you like. I would I'd only trade up in this draft to get Misa or Schaefer. I do like Anton Frendell, and you could probably talk me into doing that. James Hagens, again, probably he's been in that conversation as well, where like I'd for sure jump up for Misa and Schaefer. I'd probably jump up for Hagens and Frendell. But then from there, like Desnoyers, O'Brien, Martin, McQueen, Eklund, Mertka, like whoever you get there, I don't think I'd trade up to get one of those guys. So I certainly wouldn't trade up to get McQueen, especially if it costs, a second round pick to do so.
Especially with the questionables of the medicals. Like I'm taking him at his word that he's perfectly fine in terms of like the pull-up test, which is now becoming infamous thanks to Sam Bennett. He was fine doing pull-ups, which means he's never going to win a Conn Smythe, unfortunately. But if it is truly like a weird health concern, the egg on your face to trade up from 10 to like 6 for a kid that does not make it past the AHL because of medicals, you can't miss that.
So to that point, Eddie, you sent me a thing, I think it was Saturday. The Athletic did best and worst draft picks of the last 10 years. And it ended up being Jacob Larson, I think. Mm-hmm. And you talked to me about Braden Tracy. Is this the kind of draft where if you trade up to 7, you trade 10 and 45 for 7? Is this the kind of thing that, like, if it goes bad, it is the worst possible draft pick you could have made? Because, like, again, based on the upside, I have a hard time thinking this isn't something to be interested in. And if the upside is that significant, and he has, again, he's going to be a 6'5", almost 6'6", right shot center who can puck handle in a phone booth. And we know we've got Carlson, we've got McTavish, and we've got, Gaucher and Pedersen. Like, I feel like there's enough established center depth / good 3C prospects to say we're gonna swing for, like, we're gonna call our shot and see if it works. Like, I understand what you guys are saying. I you know what I mean. I just think there is something to be said for, at this point in the draft, much in the same way that I would prefer to not make the pick. I think making a bold pick like that is something to strongly consider.
Yeah, like
unless they want to go fucking trade it for Cole Eisen.
Yeah, like I needed more games from McQueen, where, like, yes, the injuries are a concern as well, but even in the games he played, like, I don't. There's just not enough to know if there was enough improvement there, right? Like, I don't know. I suspect if he played a full season, he'd be gone before pick number 5. But I don't know, and I don't know how much of that is due to the injury and how much is due to that just not playing enough this season, and maybe how much is due to that just maybe he didn't take enough steps forward. We will never know that. So with all those things plus the injury, I just can't go up. And certainly it's one of those situations where you could look back on it and say, man, you should have done that. Like, this kid is so much better than the rest of these guys. But there's enough question marks there where I'm just not going to do it. I'd rather just sit where you're at, keep your assets and do it. And I also don't like, I think it would cost more than 10 and 45 to get up 3 picks to number 7. I just think teams are going to ask a little bit more for that. And every team between 5 and 10 is going to have a guy they like and probably have a shot at getting that guy at that pick. And the worry that if you drop down 3 spots, you're probably going to lose that guy. I just don't see teams moving down. I see teams trading completely out of those spots and, sending that pick out to somebody who's in like the 20s but I don't see movement in the top 10. I just can't see it happen. There's too many teams that are willing to trade those picks completely out the door and get assets that can help them now, where I just don't think that's going to be a viable option. And then with all the concerns around McQueen, as much as I think he has the highest upside of the bunch, I don't pull the trigger on that move with all the question marks.
You're in the same spot, Chad?
Yeah, just nerding out real quick. I looked up the draft pick value for the NHL. If it is a trade for like to 7, who I think is 7 Boston?
Yeah.
Okay. If it's a trade to 7, the average value for that would be the allotted point total 7.1. Pick 10 is 6.0. So you need a 1.1 difference. That is a early 90s pick, apparently, to move up. In the heat of the moment, do I think that's actually what's going to cost? Probably not. This is just a bunch of numbers made up by a bunch of nerds. I don't know.
Right.
But with the history, to add on to what Eddy was saying, like I completely agree. There's not enough a body of a work for you to say, like, to really put all those chips on the table. I am, because of where the Ducks are in terms of their prospect pool, you have the luxury of sitting back and letting the board fall to you, as well as, and this may just be my own personal preference, let's say McQueen's taken at 9, and that sucks, and everybody's really upset about it. I'm fine with somebody else that would have gone in 4 through 10. I'm also fine taking Victor Eklund. So I'm fine holding out and staying at 10 because as confident as I am that Roger McQueen is going to be available at 10, I am more confident that Victor Eklund is going to be available at 10. And I really like Victor Eklund as much as I like McQueen for very different reasons. So it's I would rather let the board just come to me than try to be aggressive in this sense.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Like, in a worst case scenario, and I don't even think it's a bad case, like you said, Victor Eklund is there at 10 because everybody else above them is likely, like, if Victor Eklund goes above that, then that means McQueen's there. That means Jake O'Brien's there, or that means Brady Martin's there, or that means Ratty Merck is there. So somebody's going to be there at 10. Like, you're just kind of in that sweet spot where one of those guys is going to be there for you. Like, for Pittsburgh, it might be a little rough situation because that could shape out where none of those guys are available. Pittsburgh's in a weird spot at 11, but for the Ducks at 10, one of those guys that are considered that good mix, hard to split the difference between 4 and 10, one of those guys is guaranteed to be there for you at 10, no matter what, no matter how the rest of the draft shapes out. So you could just sit there and whoever is there just falls in your lap and you just take that guy. So there's no need necessarily to take that risk and trade up and move assets to do so when you know you're going to get one of those guys. Certainly the Ducks list is going to be much different than ours in terms of who they believe is better, and if they believe it's a 4 to 10 or if it's a 4 to 8 or whatever, right? So then they might be more inclined to make that trade. But personally, I look at it the same way as Chad. Like, worst case, you end up with Eklund, and that for me is still a very good situation. It means you're not having to go for Carter Bear or Jackson Smith or Keyshawn Aitchison. Like, you're getting still one of those guys that the wide view of the public believe is in that one tier, right? Like, there's the tier 1 of Misa Schaefer, then there's Frundell and Hagens, and then there's that third tier of those guys in there, and that kind of ends with Eklund. And then once you get to Pittsburgh with 11, there's another tier So the Ducks don't really drop off. They're right at that bottom where they're just going to catch the last guy available from that tier.
I want to ask about a player, and then in that player, I want to ask about trading back. How do we feel about Justin Carbonneau? And do you think trading back from 10 to 14, 15, 16 is a move that makes sense for Anaheim if it brings in a roster player or a useful draft pick, which based on what you said about the other one, seems like it would be like maybe a late third, early fourth.
Yeah. So with hearing smoke from the draft and the teams that are in that 4 through 10 range, it's a weird supply and demand of it seems everybody wants to trade back in this draft. And within that 4 through 10 range, anybody is willing to, like, there's even like dumb smoke that Chicago is going to trade like the 3 pick for like JJ Peterka, which
Yeah, apparently they
do
offered
it. Go
for
for
JJ
it.
Peterka.
I have no idea. Anyway, there's a weird mishigash about like trying to trade back in this draft. I don't think anybody's really going to be able to have that at around 10. I haven't watched enough of Carbonneau. I know he's projected. I know he's mainly like a shoot first guy. As an organic chemist, I like the idea of having somebody with the last name Carbon. So that's my own thing. If I had like Pat Verbeek in a room and he was telling me everything about the draft and he said, I'm going to trade back from 10 to get like 15 for like Lyndon Lakovich, sure. But again, I don't think that you're going to have that trade be available to you in which it's still going to be a fair value in return.
Yeah, again, so for all the same reasons that there's too many teams trying to trade back. Where again, is you might, if you really want that guy, like I don't think it's that much of a stretch if you're saying it's Victor Eklund versus Justin Carbonneau or Lakovich to say I'm just going to reach and take them at 10 just to get them instead of getting like a third round pick. But the Ducks don't really need to. Now, sure, like yeah, your assets, but there's no guarantee that if you move 10. That if it's Carbonneau that you want, that he's going to be there at 15, let's say, right? Like, I would just take him at 10, and I wouldn't love the pick if it was Carbonneau taken at 10 or Lakovich taken at 10, but you can make the argument on that stretch because you're passing up Eklund at that point, right? Or you're passing up Aitchison or Jackson Smith to get that guy. It's not a major stretch to do so. And again, as much as we say there's a jumbled mess between 4 and 10, there's another mix of players there where they could go anywhere really between like 11 and 18 to 20, where they could go anywhere in between. There's going to be a lot of stretches and guys that get drafted a little bit higher than we thought they would. So if you like Carbonneau at 10, just take him at 10. It's just not worth the risk and the exchanging of assets to try and push back.
This front office and this scouting team has multiple time in, time out shown that they are going to fail the cotton candy test, of which if you give them a pick like, oh, it's pick 10, who do you want? I want the guy that I want no matter what. Like, they will grab them. They took Seneca at 3. You maybe could have traded back to like the 7 or 8 to maybe get him. They don't care. They wanted him at 3, so they took him at 3. That has been the MO of this entire front office. This has been the MO of Verbeek as a drafter, going all the way back to if he had that much of a say in the Mo Seider pick, but that's one of the like main hallmarks of take your guy when you want him because he's your guy and you had a pick at that time.
Yeah, there's another player I want to ask about because I'm just, again, I said it during the pod all season, but like I just didn't get into the draft this year in the way that I have in years past, just because like it really felt to me that if this team was going to take a step forward, they were going to have to do it with the guys that were on the roster, and that this wasn't going to be a draft that was going to save them in a sense. So the next name I'm really interested in and curious about is, I want to make sure I get his first name right because I have a feeling like, yeah, no, I was right. Okay. Where are you guys at on Carter Bear? I fucking hate you. Oh my God. Did you see what he did? Or were you looking down?
No, I was looking down. Wow.
God.
Carter
Doesn't
Bear.
matter. It's fine. It doesn't matter.
That's from this is a weird shout. That's from my mother every time she goes to UCLA football game when it's like the third down and they have like the Bruin roar. She'll stand up and like start pawing.
Your mom's my hero.
Yeah, she's great.
Other than the fact that I think she's a Cal fan, you said?
It switches off every year. Who's the
good.
Cal fan? Who's the UCLA fan? Because my older brother went to Cal.
That was perfect.
Carter Bear. The whole thing with Carter Bear is I would just rather have Eklund, I think, is my main thing. Like their profile, they're both undersized-ish in terms of like what Verbeek is looking for. Carter Bear does have the injury history that he, I believe, came back from. I think it was like an ACL or something. It wasn't a minor injury.
Okay.
But the main thing with him is like he's a gamer. He outcompetes people. He's not afraid to like throw his body. And I see all of that, and I think, why would I? Okay, I could have that, or I could have this 5'11" Swedish kid that looks like he's going to be like an absolute psychopath about hockey that's already doing this against grown men. So every time I thought about like maybe Carter Bear, I just see it as like he's a good player. I wouldn't like if we took him, I wouldn't be like disappointed, but it would just be like, what about Eklund? Was it like those like very few inches that truly turned you off from Eklund?
Yeah, I like Carter Bear. I think he's a really good player. He's a guy, if you were drafting like between 12 and 16, I'd take a real good look at and say he could be the best player of the bunch in there. But I think like the upside is limited compared to the rest of the guys that we've already talked about. Like I think Carter Bear is like a middle 6'4" who's going to contribute, maybe get you the 25 goals on a high end. He's going to compete, right? But the skating is a little bit of an issue. It's not bad, but there's a reason why he's not in that mix, and the injury throws into that as well. But again, like he's a guy I like, but certainly like if we took him at 10, it wouldn't be one where I'd be jumping off the page and saying, oh, I can't believe we got this guy. I'd be looking at guys like Eklund and others that we left on the table instead. And you never want to be having that feeling when you're taking a guy at 10. So again, player I like a lot, have a lot of time for, just not with the 10 pick. If the Ducks were drafting a few spots back, I think he'd be one of the guys I'd maybe put near the top of my list around that range. But yeah, not for me. Again, why not just take Eklund, right? So
yeah. And to add to that, Carter Bear left shot, Victor Eklund right shot. What do we need?
Is Eklund's a right shot?
Yes.
Okay.
Though he plays left wing.
Oh, interesting. And then speaking of right shots, Eddy, do you want to take a second to talk about your boy Jake O'Brien?
Yeah. So I think if I had to pick today, I'd probably say Jake O'Brien is my guy to take at 10. The Trevor Zegras trade, I made this decision before that. It throws a little bit of a wrench in that where I start to look at the winger. Like I was just kind of discounting the wingers completely before the Trevor Zegras trade. Now I've been kind of more open to it. But I do like a lot of what I saw from Jake O'Brien. I like when I can, you can see a draft eligible OHL player get very close to 100 points. The guys like Martone and Misa are getting the majority of the hype from the OHL class. And I think it's, the fact that Jake O'Brien had 98 points for a team that wasn't that great last year. He's getting a little bit overlooked in terms of what he can bring. I just like the fit of bringing in a very good, skilled, not small, 6'2" right shot center into the organization, because it's just something that don't necessarily have. And again, yeah, great. Carlson and McTavish are your 1-2 punches down the middle, but we are relatively short at dynamic centers in the prospect pool right now. Like Nathan Gauthier is kind of like the next man up, it feels like, and Lucas Pettersson, I guess, is in among that mix, right? So I don't hate it, right? Like we know Seneca's the top prospect, and he's the next winger coming up. We've got guys like Pastujov as well, who've had a really good year in the AHL last year. So to throw Jake O'Brien into the mix and say, okay, we've got a Seneca, we've got a Luneau and a Smith, and now we've got Jake O'Brien as kind of your top center prospect. I just kind of like the fit of that. And he reminds me a lot of Wyatt Johnston in this draft year, and we all know how that worked out for the Stars. So I don't know if he's necessarily even just a fit at center. He's a guy that could potentially be center wing for you down the road. So I like the upside there. I still think McQueen probably has the highest upside, but next for me, among those guys, I think it would be Jake O'Brien. But unfortunately, he's probably a guy that's gone before it gets to 10.
Boston.
What about you, Chad?
Yeah.
Where are you at on O'Brien?
I see him much more as a center than anything else. And I guess I haven't really thought about him since the information that's happened of this morning. So at the time I was like, oh, well, we have 3 centers. So he's definitely not a 4th line center. So, I mean, he's a great facilitator. I mean, that's his main skill is passing. I think that's pretty well established. And I think potentially as like, you don't know what McTavish is going to turn into. McTavish has technically played on the wing before. I think he seems like a safe enough pick in my mind of he's very projectable. I did not do that much research into him because, quite frankly, I just see Boston right there at 7. And I just cannot imagine Boston having the option to take him and passing up on him. Just because, one, what they need from centers, they need somebody that can dish out a puck to Pasta or any of their wingers, as well as just, like, think about it logistically. Like, a Boston jersey with O'Brien on the back, that's going to sell out immediately.
Yeah. One guy that interests me a lot of this it hasn't got talked about a ton, and we're starting to look at and get some reports of who teams favor. Like, we know it's going to be Schaefer, Misa, Frondell, probably the top 3. Then you would say, let's just say Brady Martin goes to 4. Hagens is going to go somewhere in there. We've talked O'Brien's going to go somewhere in there. Martone probably has to go in there. So then all of a sudden you're down to pick number 7. And Caleb Desnoyers is still, pick number 8, and Caleb Desnoyers is still on the board. If he's a guy who could like sneakily fall to 10, and it's one of those guys who would fall, but no fault of his own. He hasn't done anything wrong. Just teams have their guy, and the way the draft falls, they kind of all just get their guy that they want at their spot. And then all of a sudden that just results in Desnoyers falling to the Ducks at 10. I think the only real obstacle for that is Buffalo. And then if it comes to picking, I think McQueen or Desnoyers, I could really see them going McQueen at 9 and Desnoyers falling to the Ducks at 10. It's a real long shot, but he's just an interesting one that you could look at and say, if anybody could fall, and it not being, like a McQueen fall due to an injury or something like that, just the guy that could just fall just because of the way the draft and the chips fall at the draft, it could be him. He'd be a really interesting one. Like, I think if there was ever a chance that he was there at 10, he would certainly be my selection. I think he's a top 5 pick in this draft in terms of talent. That's just an interesting scenario for me if that's a possibility.
I have a question about Buffalo. Do you think they would take McQueen having already have Tage Thompson?
I mean, it's Buffalo. You never know. But
I mean, yeah, no, that's fair.
They're the one team I look at this draft, and I have no idea what they're going to do.
Okay. And then I want you guys to argue on this one. So you're going to be in the positive, Eddy. And I want you, Chad, explain to me why you're not as high on Radim Murtka as like I kind of am in concept. Okay. So, we haven't gotten to him yet, but he's a player I think a lot of people think, I think he's the top right shot in this draft. Yeah. You made the comment to me the other day that the last time the second defenseman in a draft was drafted at 10 or later was 2010. What is it about Radim Murtka that you think if he falls to Anaheim at 10, that's not the guy I'm going with?
I just prefer other people at 10. And I know it's like, in a vacuum, this is a crazy stance to have. To say a 6'6" right shot defenseman is just somebody that I think is too much of a project. And I don't like the way that he uses his size to the point where I think it's kind of detrimental. And I say this as if I was 6'6" and a defenseman in the WHL, all I would want to do is blow people up.
Mm-hmm.
And every single highlight that you see of Radim Murka, when he's like disrupting a transition play or like getting the puck away from somebody, it's very clearly like he is using his body to position himself, but in order to get the puck, he's only using his stick. I cannot remember like watching highlights and seeing him throw hits. I cannot see him like in open ice trying to just knock somebody off the puck. It's just a bunch of stick work. And fundamentally, that is what you should see. It's just not what I want to see out of a top 10 pick out of defenseman that I am picking to be a 6'6" behemoth.
Mm-hmm.
That is my issue with it. I think he also, I mentioned that this should not be like a nitpick of mine, but if you watch any of him, like if he scores a goal, he is the most neutral, like just walks to the bench, does not care, does not celebrate, and he's just like, great, good job, we did the mission, I'm going to go back to the bench now. It's that I should not be hung up on, but I am, because I have flaws. But watching him and his highlights, you would want him to be more physical. And if you're 6'6" and you're hesitant to use your body as a defenseman, it's going to take a lot of like confidence, trust, and off-season training to get your mind back into the sense of, I can do this. And if you're hesitant to do it against people in the WHL, how the hell are you going to be able to do it in the AHL, let alone the NHL? That's my concern with Murka. If the Ducks take him on paper, can you be mad at the pick? No, it fills a hole. It's obviously like there's a huge upside to it. But in a weird way, I think he plays too safe. And I don't like that out of a right shot defenseman that is supposed to be this like physically imposing 6'6" type player.
All right, Eddie, what do you got? Why is Chad wrong?
Yeah, I think the one thing I'll start with and why I think he's right in terms of the assessment is that was Murka when he came over to Seattle from playing in the Czech Republic, is he just looked timid. And for a guy who's 6'6", you don't expect that. Like, you expect to see him going out there running people over. The one thing I will say about that adjustment is this guy's coming from playing on a bigger ice surface where that type of game is what he's supposed to play. He's played that his entire life. Stick work, larger ice. You've got to use your reach to your advantage. You're not really going to get that open ice hit. If you miss it in those leagues, then you're going to pay for it a lot more than you are in the WHL, where it's a little bit of a smaller ice surface. So to come over and have that adjustment, it's concerning. I'm not going to say it's not, because we're at that part. We've talked about this some other prospects. Of, is that an issue moving forward? We won't know until we see more games from this guy. And we've only seen him play 43 games on a North American ice surface. So that is something to note and be concerning about. But I honestly chalk that up a lot of just habit. Like, this is how this guy has played his entire life, for at least for the rest of, this season prior coming over to Seattle. Like, that is his game. That's how you have to play that game over there, especially as a younger player playing on a team where you are playing with men on most bases. So he's, you make a mistake, you're not playing the next game. It's not, you're not afforded that opportunity where you are in the junior leagues, where you are a high profile player coming over. You can make a mistake and you're going to be back out there more often than not. And at least you're going to definitely be playing the next game and still probably be playing top power play, top minutes where you were before. So I'm not as concerned about that. I think it will come. And I think the main thing is his ability to shut down plays didn't change. He's very good at being a shutdown defender. It can be inconsistent at times, but he uses his reach and his ability and like his size in a non-physical way to shut down plays. And I like that a lot. And we've seen defensemen have come along that doesn't necessarily there on a consistent basis. And he's just such a good skater for his size. Like, it's so hard to overlook that, because we drafted Connor Smith, and not anywhere near this range. But the thing about him was, okay, he's a big guy who can use his size, but he can't skate. Like, He's got, 2 bricks tied to his skates. Like he's not going anywhere, right? Rani Mirka is not only an average skater, he's an above average skater, not even just an above average skater for his size. Like he is a very good skater in this draft, regardless of his size. So that's something you don't necessarily think. A bit of a unicorn in that sense for this draft. So there's just some upsides there that you don't necessarily see. And there's an organizational fit for sure. And the final part with this is you didn't see this develop, and maybe it was just the opportunities he was given in the Czech league. The offensive side of his game. Didn't really know it was there, wasn't really given the opportunity to do so. And to come over in your first foray into North American hockey, to put up almost a point per game in the WHL, play top power play, he showed something that I think a lot of people didn't expect to be there. And there's some potential there for this guy not just to be a big shutdown right-handed defenseman who's going to fit into your top 4. All of a sudden, we're talking about number 1 defenseman potential, because if he can skate the way he does, if he can be a shutdown defenseman at his size, and he can either quarterback a power play or quarterback a power play 2 and put up 30 to 40 points at the NHL level, all of a sudden you're getting to rare territory in terms of comparables of what this guy can become. So I think all those things considered, certainly valid concerns. And for me, like, I take this pick, I'm happy, but I'm really, like, more so than any player, I'm really like keeping an eye on what this guy does physically next year in the WHL, because if he's still not using his size to his advantage and laying guys out next year, then we've got a problem, right? Like that, then it's becoming a consistent concern that a guy who's 6'6", already 200 pounds plus, much bigger than the rest of the kids in this league, and he's not using his size to his advantage, that's just going to transition to the NHL level and still be a concern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think my pushback when Chad kind of mentioned his concerns about the lack of physicality to me was like, I would kind of rather it be he's overly reliant on his stick than his physicality than the other way around, because I think teaching guys to be an effective stick checker and to be able to make those kinds of defensive poke checks, skating backwards, limiting options on guys, I just think that's a little bit harder. And I think, especially with that size, what you're going to teach that guy is if they beat your stick, congratulations to them. Now they're next to a giant, right? And so rather than teaching a guy who's physical how to use his stick, what you're teaching is a guy who has a knack for breaking up plays with his stick to then understand that that's not the end of the play. And he can now use that size, use that frame, use that skating ability to physically close that distance and put a body on a body and shut a play down. I think your point about the European ice is very well taken. I do think that should be considered a factor here because, like you said, one, he's playing with grown men. If you fuck up, they're going to send your ass right down to the bottom of the lineup and you could be a healthy scratch for 2 weeks. And, again, it is harder to be physical on that larger ice. There's just more room for guys to get around you. And if you're still trying to maintain some kind of defensive responsibility in terms of cutting off access to the center ice, there's just more room to go around you. So relying on that skating, relying on that stick work to be able to kind of counteract those kinds of opportunities, I do think is positive.
Like there's certainly room to be physical. Like we've seen, we have a guy in our organization who plays in Europe who is physical and lays big hits. Like Solberg is that guy. So the concerns of it are there. Like he needs to use his body more.
One of the big hitters of the last whatever years was Nicholas Kronwall. Again, came up in Sweden, came up on that European ice. But as you would say with Solberg, there's a very clear decision-making process for him where he was like, this is what I'm about. This is how I want to get down on a nightly basis. And if Mirka doesn't have that, again, I don't think I need him to crush guys. What I need him to be willing to do is to put his hip into their hip and rub them out along the board, right? And just kill plays by forcing guys into that board and taking that space away. And then in front of the net, yeah, it would be really nice if you could just hurt people because that's important. Um, I don't know. I really do just feel like the Trevor Zegras trade completely changed the dynamic of this conversation now, because now what we're talking about is the way this team moves forward from a massive trade. Even if someone out there likes the trade, I know I saw a few people on Twitter, or you showed me the Facebook thing of people trying to defend the trade. Like, Ryan Clark of ESPN gave it an A minus. I would love whatever weed he's smoking that he thought that was an A minus trade. I don't agree with his logic, but I can see how he arrived at that thing. But again, this is a massive pivot moment in this era of the Ducks, in this run of Pat Verbeek being the general manager. And, I think that really does mean that this draft is going to kind of come back down to that 10 pick and what this team does with that 10 pick to set themselves up moving forward. So I guess the last question I have about the draft really is are there any guys, that you guys are excited about that are maybe going to be taken with some of those later picks that you think could be good flyers, could be interesting picks? In the past, again, these are guys that we've seen like Zellweger and Pastujov, where with Zellweger it's his size, with Pastujov it's his skating. There are these knocks on some of these guys that you can kind of capitalize. The Ducks, obviously, we know with Jackson Lacombe and Ian Moore, they love to draft guys out of high school. So I think those mid-round picks are usually where this team kind of tries to kind of feast on looking after high school guys. Like, do you guys have guys that you think are just worth knowing about and maybe are a guy we could hear their name called, even if it's not by Anaheim, in that middle of the round, and you would like to see Anaheim be the one to hand him a jersey?
I've got a couple. So I've got, I think, like 4 right-handed defensemen that are supposed to be in like the round 2 to 3 region, and then 4 right shot or right wingers. I also do have, just for a little bit of brevity, I went through the Elite Prospects like entire list of all the players. I found my favorite names. Just the funniest names.
You can't tell me that, because now that's what I want to do. I don't even give a shit about flyers. Give me your favorite right shot. Give me your favorite defenseman and your favorite forward from your groups.
So I would say the most intriguing one in terms of like, ooh, this is a guy that I would want to follow, is Max Sanitska, spelled with a P. Yeah, try to figure out where the P comes in. Kind of the same thing as Mirka. He's Czech. He came over to the WHL from the Czech League. And he's a very tough read, but he's like a physical specimen just like Mirka. He's 6'5", 185 pounds. He needs to fill out his frame. And he didn't have the best production. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. One, he came over from Czechia. Like, he's learning a brand new country. And he just had to basically learn how to play on the smaller ice, as well as his WHL team kept playing him on the left side. So he didn't have the production that he should have had. But if you look at the actual like traits of him, he's not like in terms of his like production, it's not the best. I think I have down here 24 games played, 7 points in total. But he has a decent shot, decent passing. He's smart. He knows how to play the puck. He's very collected on the blue line. He's very like calm. He has the presence of somebody that should not be his age. It's just he was put in this like really weird situation, and I don't know if that's going to be able to like showcase his talents as best as he could. I think this could be somebody that the Ducks could get in like third round potentially, and just see like keep him on, actually give him a situation in which he's playing his natural side, give him some like breathing room in terms of like, you're going to stay in America, like you can learn things here, get more relaxed, and see his game develop there. He's very much a project pick. You wouldn't see him. He would need multiple years in the AHL. But I think with that frame, he's definitely like a huge boomer bust potential, I would say. And then if I want to go into my, who do I want to go for my? I'll go with this guy. I'm not going to get his last name correct. Hayden Paupanikis, or Paupanikis. It's a Greek last name. He's a 200-pound, 6'5" right shot forward. He's a very defensively minded forward. So this is somebody that you're going to see on like the third or fourth line, which I think is definitely like a translatable like position of need for the Ducks. He skates well enough that he's not going to be put into his own end. He's a very physical player. He hits hard. He's a great forechecker. He is, based on hockeyfights.com, 3-0 on his 3 WHL fights this year.
Let's go.
His cons, he's not going to be the best offensively. He's not going to like beat a bunch of players, but that's not why you're drafting him. You're selecting him because he's an athlete that can kill penalties, and he's physical enough that he's going to be able to be competent on his own end and basically lead out a rush if necessary, kind of being molded, if he can, into that like bulldog type player. I see it as like, do you want to retry on Nathan Gaucher? I'm not giving up on Nathan Gaucher, but he's had struggles in the AHL, and this is a guy that projects for the same role as him. You could see it as a much more physical Isaac Lindstrom to that extent, and that's just because he's 200 pounds, he's 6'5". That's a guy that I think could definitely be fun, and it's another one of those, like, you would want to see him develop. He's never going to be like a point-per-game player, but if he's a shutdown penalty killer, that's perfect for a third-line or fourth-line role.
Okay. What about you, Eddie? You got anybody post round that you have some interest in?
Yeah, so these guys are probably available around our second-round pick. If not, you might have to package it to move maybe into like the end of the first round, but I'd like them just as kind of either complementary pieces to whoever we get at 10. I was thinking of this way: is one of them is if you take Mertka at 10, then I've got a forward who I would take in the latter half of the draft. Or if I take a forward at 10, then I've got a defenseman in maybe the mold of Mertka that you could take. You'd probably have to trade up to get him, but just as like a kind of an offset, right? So the defenseman I look at is Blake Fiddler. He's probably going to go. Yeah, no, Vernon's kid.
Vernon Fiddler. There you go.
Yeah.
Yuri Hoodler. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so he's 6'4", 209 plays for Edmonton in the WHL, but he's just a big physical shutdown defenseman, right-handed defenseman as well, right? So when you're looking at like the options outside of Mertka, there's guys like Logan Hensler is probably going to go somewhere between 15 and 20. And you're kind of looking at the rest part, the rest of the guys available there and who would be a good fit and who organizationally, what would make sense of what we would need in a right-handed defenseman. And he just kind of fits what you'd be looking for to fit organizationally, to fill a hole is what we kind of said with Radim Mertka as well. But just a big two-way defenseman, uses his body well, isn't like inept offensively, can move the puck well enough that it can translate to the NHL level enough that he's not going to be a detriment there. So I like him as kind of that offset that, like, if you don't go Mertka, if you go Eklander, you go one of the forwards we talked about at 10, then if you can move up to get him and package both those seconds and move late into the late first round to move up to get him, I think I'd rather that than whoever you would get with both of those seconds. If it's forward at 10, right-handed defenseman at, let's say, 28, 29, 30. I think that's a better scenario than, forward at 10 and whoever you're going to get at with the 2 second-round picks. The other option, I kind of thought of it again this way, is if you get Mertka, if he falls to you at 10, you're looking at kind of a dynamic, high-skilled player around 45 who's going to be there. And I really like Riker Lee as an option. Is kind of one of the most skilled players for me outside of that like very high-end level players we already talked about. And I just feel like every year there's like the USHL just doesn't get a ton of love. And there's always one or two guys who come out of there that you look at and say, okay, like this guy probably should have gone a lot higher. Then they go to the NCAA in their D+1 year and blow it out of the water, and people wonder why this guy was drafted in the second or third round. I think he could be one of those guys. He's fourth in USHL scoring, 31 goals, 68 points for Madison. And he's going to Michigan State, which is a really good program. So I don't know. I just like the blend of skill and playmaking ability that he brings. And he's got a motor to him as well. So he's a little undersized. I think he's listed like 5'11", 181. So certainly not small by any means. But he just kind of does everything. He's a buzzsaw, and then he's just got that game-breaking skill that he can bring out every now and then. He's just got to do it on a more of a consistent basis, and that's probably why he's ranked around 35 to 45 rather than inside the first round, just because the consistency is not there. And probably, again, the league as well. The USHL doesn't get a ton of love outside of the NTDP, but yeah, he's a guy I like in that range if you're looking to go kind of pure skill to offset taking Merca at 10.
Sam Colangelo taken out of the USHL.
Yeah. Every year there's one or two guys that fall a little bit further into the second or third round, and then you look at the draft a year or two on from that, and you wonder how they fell that far. And he's a guy, I think, in a good program in Michigan State for next year. He's going to do a lot of good things, and people are going to look at that and say, well, this is a steal in the second round based on what he's doing.
Love it, man. I love it. I don't know, man. I don't know if there's too much more to talk about, boys.
I got my funny names.
Oh, let's do the funny names.
Yeah.
I forgot about the funny names.
Before I get to that, just one more. There's a player I think I briefly alluded to for Steven. David Bidkowski, who is a right-handed defenseman for Owen Sound in the OHL. 35 games played, 7 points, 73 penalty minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is... you don't need to know anything else about him. He's 6'5". He's 215 pounds. He has 73 penalty minutes in 35 games. Whatever you're picturing, that's what he is.
Wow. He's perfect.
Fun highlight to look up. Okay.
Wow. I'm gonna have to check that out. That sounds fun.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, he played with Oshawa before the trade deadline.
Yes, he got packaged in like one of those like ginormous like trade packages before the Memorial Cup.
So he knows Beckett. I love a buddy.
Sure,
I love a buddy
probably.
system.
Okay. So, some names. We have another set of twin Swedes coming to the draft this year. Hugo and Theo Ostberg. They will probably not be drafted, but they play on the exact same line. So, the next coming of the Sedins. A bit of a throwback, not that much of a throwback for Ducks fans. Olivier Grue. There's a Olivier Grue. 64 games played, 17 goals, 24 assists in the queue. He's left wing. I looked as much as I could into this. No relation.
That's just Benoit Olivier Grue re-entering the draft, just taking the Benoit off.
He's doing a Leon Sandcastle.
Yeah.
Okay. You got Melker Hoff. Melker Hoff. Eddy Yoki. Finnish.
Addy Yoki?
Mm-hmm.
J-O-K-I?
ATTE space JOKI. Eddy Yoki.
Perfect.
Love it.
Center, nearly a point per game in the under 20 Finnish league. A very fun throwback for Ducks fans. Forward from the UHL committed to Denver, Ryan Miller.
Yes. God, please
got
tell
another
me that's
Ryan
Drew's
Miller.
son.
No relation to the goalie, but a good little fun. This could be the high school player that the Ducks take. Willie Schneid, right winger, 62 games played, 100 points. He's committed to UConn.
He's going to
Willie
UConn?
Schneid. He's going to UConn.
Okay, give me a second. 2025 NCAA men's hockey rankings.
Willie
Did UConn
Schneid.
even make the fucking tournament?
I have no idea.
Yeah, they were 9th at the end of the. Okay, all right, fair enough.
Left-handed defenseman. He's, I believe, 6'1", 6'2". John Stout.
It's not a real person. You want to talk about guys who would be beloved in Boston? Are you see
John
Johnny
Stout.
Stout?
Left winger from the OHL, Evan Van Gorp.
It's not a real person. Evan Van Gorp.
Yes. And then last but not least, you have Leo Sundqvist in the Junior 20 Swedish League. He's a 5'9" right winger. And if you don't like him, you can also take Leo Sundqvist, the 6-foot left-handed defenseman in the Junior League for Sweden.
No
relation.
Leo for you. God, there's a Leo
While
for
we're
all
on the topic
ages.
of guys the Ducks fans would know, and then sons of former NHLers, Sean Horkoff's son is in the draft too, William Horkoff.
Does he also do PEDs?
I hope not.
Check his weight.
Yeah, well, he is 18 and 6'4", 181. So maybe, I don't know.
My goodness, Sean Horkoff's kid. I really thought the Sean Horkoff signing was going to work out, and it did not. But I thought it would.
No, definitely did not. Okay, I got a. Well, it's not really a quick question. I was going to say it's a quick question, but a last final question about the draft. So it's a long one, and you can have the same answer for multiple ones. But I want who you want to take, who you think the Ducks will take, and then your best and worst case scenarios with that 10 pick in terms of who they could get. So it's, again, four potential players, and it can be the same one. Whoever wants to start it off first, but it's who you want to take personally, who you think the Ducks will take, and then the best case scenario, like realistic. Obviously, Michael Misa is not going to fall to 10, and then the worst case scenario for who you think the Ducks would take, basically who you don't want them to take at 10.
My best case scenario, I think there is like less than a 2% chance he somehow falls to 10. Porter Martone, I would love him on this team. If you're trying to build the Florida Panthers on the Anaheim Ducks, cool. You take Porter Martone. Who I think they will take, I think everything in my mind is telling me that they're taking Roger McQueen. And I just think that they're in the position, all the comments that Verbeek made, all the like insider stuff about him, I think it just makes a lot of sense. I just think enough like hidden messages have been sent along that way. Best case scenario, I guess I would say in terms of realism, potentially Jake O'Brien falls, or McQueen falls to 10, and he does like a bunch of cartwheels and backflips while going to get his jersey. So we know he's fine.
Dude, he does the fucking Gene Wilder and Willy Wonka. And
The Willy
Factory
Wonka,
bit.
the cane, somersaults. Yeah.
Perfect.
And I guess my like worst case would be I have a worst case I don't think will happen. Worst case realistic would be any sort of like left-handed defenseman. I would say like a Jackson Smith. Worst case that I don't think will happen, whoever that like Russian kid that like apparently is bombing all of his interviews and everybody hates.
I think it's Ryabkin, but yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, that's
It was part of like a Scott Wheeler questionnaire for like anonymous scouts. They asked like, "Hey, when would you draft him?" He's like, "Oh, talent. He's like top 15. I wouldn't touch him until the 5th round."
Oh wow!
I think I know who it is.
Yeah, I'm trying to find his name.
I think it's Ivan Ryabkin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, Steven, do you have some picks based off what we've said?
All right, what are they again? What are the four? I want to make sure I get this right.
Who you want to take, who you think the Ducks will take, and then the realistic best case and realistic worst case scenario for the 10 pick.
Man, who I want? I think I've kind of talked myself into Roger McQueen. You know what? I'll say I don't like it. I don't like any part of this right now. Yeah, I'll say Roger McQueen because I think his ceiling is so high. I think that's a good that's the pick they should be making. I mean, look, if you want to be completely honest, I think the best case for 10 is whoever they trade for, right? I think the best case with who they make with the 10 pick is Jason Robertson. So maybe I'll say that as my answer. That'll be my answer. The best player they can pick with the 10 for me, who I most want them to get with the 10 pick, would be Jason Robertson. The player I think they're most likely to take. I have a hard time thinking Cam isn't right 3 years in a row or 3 out of the last 5, I guess it would be. And I think it's Keyshawn Aitchison. I don't know, man. It makes me anxious, but I think the best possible pick is probably Jake O'Brien. I do think that's right, and I think the ultimate red flag pick. Yeah, probably Jackson Smith.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Because I don't. Again, I don't know this stuff the way you guys do, but I feel like Jackson Smith. You're basically like, hopefully he turns into Jackson LaCombe. I don't know if that's quite right, but that kind of feels like the gist I'm getting from hearing you guys talk, hearing the PDO cast talk, some of the stuff I've read. It kind of feels like that's your best case scenario. And it's like, I love Jackson LaCombe. I'm really glad we have him. I don't know if what I hope is the last lottery pick we make, that's the dude we're getting. So I would say Jackson Smith.
Yeah, I would say for me, who I want, it's a tie between two guys that I think realistically won't be there, but it's either Jake O'Brien or Radim Murka. It would just be saying whatever one of the two would theoretically be there at 10. I do think the Ducks take Roger McQueen now, just with the comments from Pat Verbeek and looking at the player with the most upside. I think if he's there at 10, I think he's the guy they take. Best case scenario, I think there is a slim chance, because everybody seems to have their guy, that Caleb Desnoyers could somehow fall to 10. I think that it's an unlikely scenario. It's the same as just Chad's with Porter Martone, but that's my best case. Is just one of those guys just happens to fall just because everybody has their other guy that they like more, and he just happens to be there for the Ducks at 10. And then worst case for me, even above like a Keyshawn Aitchison, is like they just reach for like a Lyndon Lakovich or something at 10 and just skip over all these guys and go for that. He just feels like those types of guys just feel like they scream a Pat Verbeek type player. And again, we talked about them, just no point in trading down. They'll just take their guy if they like their guy at 10. And I just worry that they could think that he's the best fit and could have the highest upside of the highest upside of the type of team that they want to build. That's where like the highest upside conversation gets, or quote, gets twisted a bit, where it's maybe not the highest upside of the common consensus. It's the highest upside for the type of team that Pat Verbeek wants to build. And that just happens to land on a guy like Lyndon Lakovich. So that's my worst case for 10.
Fair enough, man. Can't hear you, bud. I love getting to tell him that.
Okay.
There he is.
Now I'm back. My joke that was unceremoniously cut off. If you have a video of Porter Martone or Caleb Desnoyers smoking weed out of a gas mask, please release it to the draft so he falls to 10.
Oh my God, bro. Dude, Caleb Desnoyers being Laramie Tunsil. Oh, that would be cool.
And I'll say this from a queen: 95 is available. It would go so hard. 95
Yeah,
McQueen,
sweet.
perfect jersey. I'm not the one. I think Patrick said that back in like April, I think, but
Yeah,
It'd be legendary.
God, yeah, I do think there's an argument to be made that of all the fallers, Desnoyers is the one that's the most interesting. Because again, like you guys have said a few times, like it looks like it's a bit of a jumbled mess, and I mean, the PDO cast, like which is kind of always one of my things that I go to, just because I have so much time for Cam Robinson and Chris Peterson, Chris Peterson. Why all of a sudden am I telling myself I don't know his name? Anyways, doesn't matter. But they were talking about Brady Martin being in all these conversations, and I don't think they picked him till like 12 or 13. It's just one of those things. So I think this is going to be a really volatile draft. I think I think there's a world in which James Higgins takes a Shane Wright tumble down the draft, and it just kind of is what it is. I'll tell you what, I think the other thing, other than Jackson Smith, my worst case scenario is fucking trading up for Anton Friedel. I would fucking hate that.
I mean, it depends what it costs. Like if it didn't cost a lot, I would love it. It'd be great because I do think he's one of the top end players of this draft. But if it's going to cost you something, a top prospect to get it done, then I'm not for that.
if that's you trading into like 3 with Chicago for like Troy Terry, I'll be at the draft. You can put me down right then and there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll give Steven, we'll sneak something in. You can just in the back of the neck real
make it
quick.
happen. But that would just be frustrating. I don't want to see that. But
Yeah.
man, I bet you Chicago will make that trade tomorrow.
Oh, absolutely.
Every year we get like this one team that kind of decides how the rest of it goes, and I think that's Utah this year. And what they do at 4 could really
Very
It
throw.
was usually us.
Yeah, exactly. And we usually did something weird, whether it was McTavish or Seneca or whatever. But I think it's Utah because I think you go Schaefer, Misa, Frundell is whatever way you want to spin it. Whoever goes where is the front 3, and then if they go Martin at 4, you probably say Hagens goes to Nashville, and then Philly's an interesting. Maybe Philly goes McQueen, O'Brien goes to Boston, Mertka goes to Seattle, and then Buffalo takes whoever is left at that point, and then
I don't think you ever said Martone.
Yeah, Martone's there as well, so Buffalo takes. So that's the way one of them falls, right? Is if the draft goes that way, that the guys just have the guys that they like. That one of those guys falls to 10.
I don't understand with Utah when the entire thing is like, oh, we want to like get our Sam Bennett because that's how you win in the playoffs. You also win the playoffs by having Matthew Tkachuk, and poor Martone is right there. And it's not a perfect comparison, but I mean,
it's one of those teams every year. One of those teams they just overthink it and they just fall in love with a player and what they think they're going to get, and they don't care necessarily what else they're leaving on the board. They just really love this guy and the fit and what they think he's going to bring. And yeah, Brady Martin jumping all the way up to 4 throws a wrench in terms of and a good wrench for the Ducks in terms of who could potentially be there at 10. It just opens up a whole new world of possibilities of guys that could be available to them.
My hot take for the draft is that there is a second left-handed defenseman that gets taken before 10. Just one of Aitchison or Jackson Smith gets taken before we actually get to 10. And then that really throws something off.
Yeah, I feel like that's like Philly, right? Like, Buffalo doesn't do that with Power and Deli and Byram there, but I don't think Boston does it, and I think Seattle probably is more prone to go Merca. But yeah, that's like a Philly type situation where they just really like Keyshawn Aitchison and they take him at 6 or something insane like that. So you could see it. Like, I mean, they've gone out and they've gotten their skill guy, so certainly they don't need to go forward. They don't have to go forward at this point if they don't want to, because they've made the trade to bring in Trevor Zegras. they could be the wild card as well as Utah to go out and say, okay, well, if it's not Merca and they just really like a guy like Keyshawn Aitchison, they go out and grab him.
Yeah, and they already are known to buck trends. I mean, they got Jet Luchenko at 13.
Yeah, they will be. Danny Briere will be one to watch on draft day, and then I mean, listen, I would love for that to happen because again, we talk about Utah opening up possibilities for the Ducks. If Brady Martin goes 4 and Keyshawn Aitchison goes 6, the Ducks are not going to have one player fall to them. They're going to have a pick of a few different guys that they didn't expect to be there. So, and listen, it's a good pick to be at. I think 9 is probably the ideal one this year if you're talking about like being the beneficiary of guys falling. So the Sabres are in a really good spot, but 10 is certainly not a bad spot to be because teams are going to make some weird decisions in front of you that's going to leave you in a pretty good spot.
I just wish we were in front of Seattle just because of like Merca's an easy stopgap to just like hang your hat on.
Yeah.
Him playing for the Seattle WHL team. And they also just every year seem to want to go center. If we were in front of them, I would feel a bit better. But
yeah, of course, as it is with most years, we fall a couple spots in the draft. So
every year.
Yeah.
The Ducks have never improved their lottery standing in their entire history as a franchise.
Some notable ones in there too.
Looking at you, Gavin fucking McKenna.
Maybe. Well, I mean, ideally, we don't want to be in that conversation next year, but that's not a bad.
No. It's either price. Make the playoffs or get Gavin McKenna.
Yeah.
Those
or
are the two.
One of the two other Swedes.
Mm-hmm.
The Vigo Bjork is going to be either the second or third pick next year.
You're making fucking guys up. You're doing it again. It's like when Eddy tried to convince me Brad Lambert was a real player in the NHL.
I mean, the jury's still out because I haven't seen him play too much. So
shit, dude, that's what we should do. Is just trade one of the one of the third round picks or something, and Pastiyov or something, and go get Brad Lambert and add some just crazy dynamic speed to this team.
Could go back to the well of kids that don't want to sign with their teams. Get Isaac Howard.
Now we're cooking, bro.
Yeah.
That's what we should do.
Yeah. That's an easy one. That if you had to give up like a third round pick to go do that, you go do it.
Dog, I also just not to harp on the Zegras thing again, but like you couldn't call Tampa and just say like, "Hey, we have a player that doesn't want to play for us. You also have that. Want to swap?"
Yeah. Boy, I'd have felt a lot better about Isaac fucking Howard than Ryan Paley.
Yeah.
Poor Ryan Paley, man.
All
right, I'm not doing this. It's 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this. I'm not going to do the first 45 minutes of this podcast. It's not 2 hours.
Yeah, we're pushing 3 on this one. So yeah, I mean that barring anything crazy happening before the draft, this is it. We'll be back after the draft to break down, see if any of us were right about our predictions. I feel like we've at some point said every possible name the Ducks could take at 10, so one of us is bound to be right. And then the big question is what's going to happen in free agency and if there's any trades at the draft. So I imagine, Steven, probably July, the weekend after. Or I was gonna say the weekend after Canada Day. Forgetting both of you, that means nothing to you. So the weekend of what is it? The 6th. 5th and 6th, I think, is the weekend. So that's probably. I think we'll probably hop on then and cover the draft and the first few days of free agency and see how things go. Potentially, if anything big happens at the draft or before the draft, we'll hop on for another one. But that's going to be it.
Cover up Mitch Marner's 2-year deal for $15 million. Biblical levels of greed. If he does that, not to root for injuries, if he actually signs a 3-year deal just to wait for the cap to go up even more, he's getting injured. That's a biblical level greed. You are blowing something out.
That rules. If he goes to 3 years, $13 million, $13.5 million, and just as fuck it, wait for the cap to bounce, and then I'll make 16 again after McDavid takes 18 or whatever horse shit. That would rule.
Oh, he's certainly going 15 if he's going 3 years for sure. He's going as high as a team's willing to give him on a 3-year contract.
I heard today. I saw it today. I don't remember who it was, but from one of the legit insiders, one of the Toronto insiders, like, and I mean Toronto is in the hub of the hockey world, not Toronto, the Maple Leafs. Although, but one of them said he would do like 12.5, 13 million on a 2-year deal. Is the rumor out there right now?
Jeez.
Think you got it?
Whatever. Bet on yourself, I guess. But
That's right. So
we'll see. We'll see how it pans out. Hopefully, if he signs in Anaheim, it's not a 2-year deal. Some weird. I see. Is that?
yeah.
Is that? We're gonna get into it. I was about to say, is that worst case? Because then he's just gonna leave here in 2 years anyway. I don't want to get into that. That hadn't entered my brain until now, and I really don't. I felt enough pain for today. I don't need it. I don't need that.
Yeah.
All right.
Get the hell out of here. Chad, as always, thank you so much for sitting down with us, bro.
Of course. Always happy to be.
Eddie, I hate you, and I'll talk to you later.
All right. Take care, guys. We'll see you soon.